Again, welcome to the Chatham Township Committee meeting of May 7th. This is our workshop meeting. Can everybody rise for our flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. LeConte confirmed that adequate notice was given. That was before we were into executive session, and so we are moving to the hearing of citizens. Mr. LeConte, can you show the guidance for the hearing of citizens?
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you are watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you're recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services.
Thank you.
We do not have any written comments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we do.
We have a microphone.
Stuart?
Hello, can we hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stuart Carr, C-A-R-R, from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township, New Jersey. Wanted to speak for a moment again on the Oprah reform item. Some of you may be aware, all of you, and apologies for redundancy, that is coming up again on Thursday, the 9th of May, to my understanding, with a vote scheduled for Monday, the 12th of May. So the last 6 weeks, and we're talking about, let's get on this case. Here we are. It's coming right up, and it's coming right down, jamming down our throats again. So I guess a couple of comments I'd like to make are, number one, is there anything we can do to actually get the attorney here to spend a little bit of time and give a more balanced view of what's going on, specifically with respect to the fee shifting issues and some of these other issues that have come up in my emails and otherwise, instead of, again, basically giving the infomercial for the League of Municipalities and Conference of Mayors, et cetera, et cetera. I think, again, in defense of the committee, you people have huge amounts on your table, and it is incumbent upon the administrator and the attorney to give an executive summary to people like Mr. Choi, who didn't have time to really dig into it because he's got a lot of other things on the table. And I do, again, fault the committee a little bit for not pushing the administrator and the council to actually give you guys an executive summary of what's going on. So hopefully we could do that tonight. If not, then again, so be it, and shame on all of us. But one thing, a couple of specifics real quickly. Number one, with Mr. Shahadi and the comment, I think back in April or so, about the non-eleemosynary ambulance chasers, et cetera, et cetera. The other side of that, of course, is those people, for the most part, those attorneys are, again, at the behest of people who want to get open public records. And in fact, the things they're going after are, by definition, open public records. If there was more stuff online or available easily, then they wouldn't have to be doing half of that. And just like the administrator and attorneys work for a living and are professionals, these people are professionals as well. So there may well be some kinds of breaches in the system or abuses of the system, but for the most part, that's a cost of doing business. And I'm not sure we've really spoken to that, and the attorney has given the committee a good overview of what this fee shifting will do when it goes from statutorily, if a plaintiff wins a case, then the council pays or the town pays, to this judicial deference scenario. And I guess one thing with that basically is if in fact for Mr. Shahadi's case that the attorneys charging all this money, and the township has to pay all this money for all these fees, for all these lawsuits? Maybe the answer, of course, is fire the attorney and fire the clerk and fire the administrator, because they're not giving out the public information that should have been available in the first place. So it kind of cuts both ways. But the net of all of that is I don't think the committee has gotten a good enough summary of what is actually going on and why they should be actively opposed to this type of thing as opposed to being neutral. We have a Democrat majority, therefore silence effectively is, again, agreeing with Trenton. Not to let Mr. Lois off the hook, real quick, not to let Mr. Lois off the hook, there's also some Republicans who are co-sponsors.
Mr. Carr, your time is up.
Therefore, they should be there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. I'm not going to shift into Oprah now, but the part that he mentions was part of the original legislation. So I might want to ask it during the administrative section when we go into the administration reports. But I don't want to put you on the spot with anything else that's new unless you feel comfortable talking about it. But let's hold off on that for now. Anybody else?
Good evening. Nicole Hagner, Hagner, River Road. Mayor Ewell, just procedurally, we're here because I know during the engineer's report, we'll be talking about the Greenway connector, the Green Village connector. So is now the opportunity for us to ask our questions, or would we have the opportunity after we hear the presentation to ask questions?
You know, I was thinking about that before you came up.
Okay.
I think we should, we'll end the public session and then we'll do another one, unless there's any objection from the committee, but I think that's perfectly fine. So Mr. Rushby will give his presentation and then we'll reopen the public session, because I don't want you guys waiting till the bitter end in order to have any,
Well, and we'd like to hear the presentation because maybe that will resolve some of our questions as well. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Hi, Jessica Romeo, Pine Street. I just wanted to say I know the native plant ordinance is on a discussion item. I'm here if you want to ask any questions. That was put forth by the Environmental Commission and written by us. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'm just waiting. I don't want to keep you here all night. Does anybody have any questions now, or do you want to wait?
Well, it's also on the same. Do you want us to do that the same way?
Okay. Yeah, we can do that then. You're right.
That
Okay.
way when we talk about it.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on Zoom?
No, their hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to close out that public session, and why don't we move into the presentation on the Green Village Connector Trail.
So, Administrator said keep it sweet and short, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but essentially this was a project that was identified several years ago as a project that the committee wanted to pursue initially with a grant with Morris County. The path itself is actually in the master plan, and I think that was one of the reasons why I wasn't involved in the initial. We were looking at the Morris County grant opportunities and looking at various different projects, and I know the master plan was looked at, and this project was pulled out as something to look at. It was presented to Morris County, and the Morris County was very in favor of it. The overall goal of the project is to interconnect the sidewalk that's on Southern Boulevard, so you can essentially walk the sidewalk on Southern Boulevard, connect into this trail, which will bring you over to the Morris County Park System, the Lawanico Bay Reservation. So that was the intent of making this connector, is that we're connecting, the Southern Boulevard with that county park system. And the county, even from the beginning, recognized that the township's portion of this connector trail was phase one. It was that the township would take the first initiative to install this trail on their property, and then the county was going to continue the trail once we intersect with Green Village. We go from that point. They were going to take the lead and connect it into their park system and their trail system. So there was from the very beginning, they weren't sure exactly what path they were going to take. There was some discussions with the property owner of possibly acquiring their property, and so from the very beginning, the planning stages, the county wasn't sure exactly how they were going to connect it, but that was their goal. Their goal was to fund our project, have the township construct its portion, being phase one, and then they would continue with phase two to complete the connector into the system. The trail is basically an 8-foot wide. A portion of it is porous pavement, which is basically just asphalt, and then the other portion is actually an elevated boardwalk. It's very similar construction to what you would see if you go to the Great Swamp Watershed, the refuge, and they have them throughout, and that's generally what the construction is following, the same U.S. Department of Forestry's standards regarding the construction of that boardwalk. So the project has been basically designed with the alignment shown. The alignment was tweaked to a degree when we went to the DEP and obtained a wetlands permit and also a flood hazard permit. They were looking at the alignment. They tweaked the alignment a little bit. They actually had us extend the boardwalk a bit just to breach some, or just go over some more sensitive areas that they wanted us to. And so the general alignment on our site was coordinated with the DEP and take into considerations the location of the flood hazard area and the location of the wetlands. Where we're interconnecting with the Green Village, initially we were trying to have the path go, straight through the center of that finger of the township property, which township lots are right here. This is the township border, and this is the, initially we were proposing to put it right through the center, trying to keep separation from the two properties and just giving some buffer between the two. But we did meet with the Morris County Engineering Department, and basically they dictated where they would like to see the path come out and cross Green Village. They regulate the location of the crosswalk and construct all the improvements that we're doing on Green Village. So we are proposing to do flashing beacons at the crosswalk, so residents can do that. There are going to be striping and signage all along the approach to the crosswalk. You'll see a crosswalk ahead painted on the road going over in multiple locations, and so we're following the county's guidance and their not guidance, but frankly their requirements of what they want to see with the crosswalk. So where we are with permitting, we have obtained all the permits that are necessary, the DEP permits in the Morris County Soil Conservation District. Right now, the project, the design was funded through a grant through Morris County. The township did have a 20% match on that grant. The construction, we did obtain a grant from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. It's a transportation enhancement grant, and that will pay 100% of the construction cost. The initial construction cost was just over $1 million. With that federal program, even though it does take a while before you actually get through their program and bid the project and construction, so it may be a year or two before we actually do that. So if there's escalations of cost, they will pick that up. They've done that in many projects, even with our similar program is a Safe Routes to School program. So even in that case, the cost estimate that was done years ago, they just basically update the cost estimate, and that's what they agree to fund. So they will fund 100% of that. From a design perspective, the only remaining portion of the design that is left is actually doing soil borings, just the to verify the foundation for the boardwalk itself. That was not done right away because frankly we wanted to confirm the alignment with the DEP and get them to agree with the alignment in the proximity of the wetlands. And then, so since we've got that, we have hired a contractor to actually clear a path so the driller can get into the locations to drill it. It's going to be approximately a 12 by 15 foot clearing that the contractor is going to do. He already cleared over by Nash Field. He hasn't started on the Green Village side because it's just been too wet, and so he's been waiting to get in there. So, but that's what he's going to clear that so we can get the drill rig in. That is going to be the extent of the clearing associated with the site. The intent is to minimize the clearing to the maximum extent possible. So we're only clearing a maximum of 15 feet, through this whole corridor. So that's the extent of all the clearing that's going to be done. So, and then I would anticipate that the drilling is not going to happen until the summer, only because during the drier months the ground is a little more firm. We didn't want to pay the added expense of having to come in with swamp mats and make this into a major project versus going in with a small drill mounted rig and they can come in and just install the boring. So that's the only part of the design that's left to complete that. Where we are with the federal agency is that they have a process that they have to follow under the, because it is funded, it's funded through the New Jersey DOT, but New Jersey is using federal funds to fund the project, so we have to follow federal guidelines. And there's an initial process that's done. It's a category exclusion determination, and it's a process that the DOT does internally, and it's basically they're going through the federal regulations and making sure that we comply with all the federal requirements and the environmental requirements and such. It should not be a problem, but it just takes forever to get through all the individual departments that they go through. They'll go through the SHPO department and they'll go through DEP. They'll go through all the different various agencies and they'll go through. So they're in the process of doing that. That process, it can take 3 months. It could take a year. It really is. It's really based on the resources that the DOT applies for it. I would hope that with this particular project, usually the initial is that you go through the CED process before you have the design advanced as far as we did, and they usually don't even have the permits. So we have permits, we have an advanced design, so we're expecting that that process will go through. So once we get through the CED process, then the DOT is going to review. They'll go through their engineering review and process and make sure that everything that we're doing is complying with the federal requirements. And then ultimately, they give us authorization to go out to bid. And so that's our goal ultimately, is to get that authorization to go out to bid. Now there is no firm date of when that is because of the CED determination and even the DOT's. Their review process is just extremely slow. So it's I can't even estimate at this point when. You can look at our Safe Routes to School examples of how long they take to get. So this goes through a similar program where we're years ahead of the Safe Route to School program, but we're still in that pipeline of how the work is done. And I just have to be frank that once we go out to bid, it's a challenge even to award a contract because of the federal requirements and forms that need to be filled out. We've rebid one of the Safe Routes to School project 3 times because the contractors keep filling out the forms wrong. So so when we say when is this trail going to be constructed, we just have to get that contract awarded, and then we can make a reasonable determination of when it would be done. So this project could take a year, it could take 3 years to actually see a shovel in the ground. I just it's hard to follow with. Can't guarantee with the, it's nothing with. It's completely out of our hands. It's in the hands of the DOT following their federal program and giving us the authorization to bid, and then the follow up is trying to get go out the bid and then actually have a responsive bid that we can award a contract. So that's the general overview.
Thank you. I'll turn it to the committee for questions first.
I have a general question first.
John, you have, it's a dark path. Can you take your cursor and show where the hard surface is versus the boardwalk?
Yeah, yeah,
How
you're
long
right,
is it?
it's hard to see, but it starts, okay, it starts, this is the hard path here.
Right.
And then this is all boardwalk, all the way
Okay.
through here, and then it starts up here. So it's quite a bit
All
of.
the lowlands are.
Yep, all those low-lying area. This is an area that's extremely wet. We actually had to have the boardwalk elevated in this area, because this is in fact a stream that flows through this area. There's a stream on this here, and there's a stream on this side. So when we did the hydraulics, we had to model both these streams, and it was quite an extensive permitting exercise to get through and get with the DEP.
Thanks.
When it goes to Nash, where it is, it's right towards the town.
It can go a blow up on. Yeah, this is Nash. So here's the parking lot. Here's the parking lot, and it goes, and there's a building that's here. So it's right behind the building, and then it follows the tree line. So it's basically following the tree line right in this location. This is where the skate park, the skating ring is. So we're right on the edge of that, and then there's a basin in the back, so we're right on the edge of that, and that's where we're converting to the boardwalk at this location. So it's for Nash, it's really just on the edge of the park, and then here it's just going right into the woods.
Thank you. And was it 6 feet or 8 feet?
8 feet.
Okay.
8 feet.
It's just for walking, you can't bike ride or?
Well, we'll set the rules, but certainly we would want to have, people can ride a bike, walk it across and that. So, ideally we would want it wider, but it was a challenge. The DOT, in fact, would prefer to have it wider and even pay for it being wider, but the DEP, restricted it. The DEP, in fact, preferred to have it 6 foot, but we convinced them that 8 foot was more appropriate.
So in terms of the timeline, it sounded like there was clearing going on now. Construction is a little bit less known. And the part that fell off for me was the pilings or the borings.
Mm-hmm.
Borings are drilling, right? Or removal of dirt so that you could put a footing down or some.
Yeah, we're gonna do a soil boring, identify the soil stratigraphy.
Oh, okay. You're not setting footings.
Oh, no,
for
no,
the
no, we're
boardwalk.
just doing
Okay, you're
split
just doing-
spoons, 2-inch diameter split spoons, taking soils so that we know exactly what the soils are. They'll do blow counts to identify the resistance of the soils and determine the engineering properties of the soils. We have a feeling, good understanding of this area from the USDA soil survey, where we're going to hit, more competent material. So we based the design currently on the soil survey, which is somewhat reliable, but we want to, make sure that what we have out there.
So the 15 feet that max that's clearing is on the Nash side?
Through both, it's on both sides. We're doing soil borings along the alignment of the boardwalk. So it's on both sides, and a lot of the clearing is only, especially on the Green Village side, a lot of the clearing is just cutting trees out that fell, that need to be moved so a driller can get the drill rig through. So it's not even cutting trees. There's no large trees to be cut. We worked it so we try to, at least for the drilling operations, there's no large trees going down. It's just, the clearing is really being done so that the drill rig can get in. It's just make it accessible. It's not the final clearing for construction. There's still some work to be done when they build the path, but it's just enough to get the drill rig in.
Okay.
In the document that we had, you've answered some questions, and one of them was about sightlines as the path exits onto Green Village Road.
Mhm.
And it said that there was going to be clearing done there in
Yes.
order to enhance the sightlines.
Correct.
When is that determination going to be made, or how? Can you talk about that process, please?
Well, the determination has already been made that this is the location that the county prefers to have the location of the crosswalk.
Yeah, but in terms of the clearing of whatever might be sightline obstruction
Yeah,
or vegetation.
Yeah, we're clearing it along the entire area of, in front of the town property. We're clearing this general area. There's a lot of trees that are just overgrowth you know, there's trimming to be done, and so it's all along our side, there's clearing. You know, on the opposite side, there is, you know, for the most part, it is open. There is a tree located down here in the right-of-way, a smaller tree that is proposed to be removed to you know, get full sight distance on this area. You can see, but there is one tree that is going to be removed within the right-of-way.
So are you to clear the whole, is that plan to clear the whole right-of-way, or 25-foot setbacks like a house, or what's the?
No, it's just within the right-of-way itself. It's just, you know, we're not clearing more than 10 feet off of the edge of curb. You know, that's you know, just enough. Some of it is because it's where the ADA ramp is going to be. You probably don't need to do it all, but we wanted to get, as part of this project, at least do the majority of it, to pull those limbs back so that, you know, we'll probably have to do maintenance, you know, in a few years when this starts to overgrow again, but we just wanted to get it cleared for the initial project.
So the path is 6 foot wide, and what is the buffer between the path and the adjoining properties, do you know?
Well, here's the property line right here, is going back. So right on this corner is probably the least buffer that we have. It does open up here, and then it comes back. So initially, you know, this was dictated by the DEP, where they wanted to have it come out on this side. And initially, we had the path coming out, actually had it coming out over here in the center of the property, and the county, with their meeting with them, where they would prefer to have the crosswalk, we ended up shifting it over. So we are closer to the property line here. It's probably around 30 feet from these 2 points, and then it opens up substantially on the far side.
Okay, so it's greater than normal setbacks, 30 feet.
Yeah, 30 feet for a side yard.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions from the committee?
Just one more about on the Nash side. The boardwalk's elevated, and it looks as if there's a severe grade change from the upper ice rink to the lower ice rink, and that's exactly where the boardwalk transition happens.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You can actually
this is
see the
elevation.
you can actually see the grades here, but
Yeah. So there will be. Okay.
Yeah, because this is where the basin starts, so you can actually see where the grade changes and it transitions.
So what's the average height of the boardwalk then? I mean, I can imagine there it's going to be substantial.
No, well, we're dictating it to be above, where the bottom of the chord is 1 foot above the flood hazard area. So when you have a flood hazard area is 20% above the 100-year floodplain. So we have a freeboard, but just you know, over here the boardwalk gets very narrow or very shallow. It's just with the transition.
It could be very close, but specifically there at Nash, I mean, if it goes down a hill, you can't have a boardwalk going at a severe grade like that. I mean, it would obviously.
Yeah, I think we have it at a 5% grade. It's the maximum grade that we have, just that transition.
So at that transition, you might have a 4-foot elevation or something.
Oh yeah. That's at that one location. Yeah, we have in some areas when it goes across the actual. There's this area. Go back. Okay, so the center, this where it's crossing this area here, this is where it's the highest. Because the grade actually does come up in this area for the flood hazard, but this is areas where this is the most low-lying area that we have in the path. So there, it may be 3 or 4 feet above the ground surface in that location.
Okay, if there's no more questions from the committee, we'll reopen the public hearing. And the same rules apply that were shared earlier.
And Nicole Hagner, Hagner, River Road. Thanks, John, for going through that.
Good to
so-
see you, Nicole. It's been
Yeah,
a while.
I know, exactly. Just to help me a little bit more understand, John, I appreciate that the road's a county road and you have discussed it with the county, right, the crosswalk area?
Yes.
So the first question is that Chatham Township, according to your responses, right, is responsible for putting the markings down on the road, which obviously isn't terribly costly. But the county's saying that they'll eventually link it up right into some sort of county park system.
Correct.
But, I mean, to be quite honest, and unless you guys, at least, I guess my question's sort of to the committee, unless we know we have commitment, it seems a little bit concerning to me, at least, that we would have a park, a trail that would go across a crosswalk to nowhere, if they really don't ever come through and put their sidewalk in, or even do something on the Miller's property that apparently they've acquired, right?
Yeah.
So I would expect maybe some guarantee there, because why would we spend the money or do this to have a crosswalk go to nowhere?
Very good
Can I ask-
question.
yeah,
but
yeah,
that-
I don't want to do it back and forth, so can you, I'll ask you to ask all the
Okay,
questions.
okay, so that's one question, just trying to understand what kind of commitment we have from the county on that. Specific to, I know you didn't do all the numbers, but it would be a little bit, could you help me understand what is considered adequate site distance in this area for a mid-block? You say it reaches DOT standards, but what's adequate? I mean, is it the minimum standard you're following? What is that number?
Yeah, you have to have a site distance because based on this, the speed limit. And so you have to have a 305 feet site distance. So when you're standing on the ADA ramp, before you step into the roadway, you have to be able to see 305 feet.
Okay, I mean, I guess I would argue, I don't think you can see 305 feet after being on that road, looking down, that it doesn't meet that standard.
All
I mean, it's-
I can just say that the
Yeah.
counties, will verify everything. We have, we have a survey map that we did to show that it is. But, the cross, being the safety associated with the crosswalk is an ultimate concern. And,
Yeah.
we're not, treating that.
John,
I'm sorry, you
sorry.
go through the questions.
Let's
Sorry.
go through the questions. Just-
Okay, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, we weren't supposed to do back and forth, okay.
Yep.
So I guess really understanding what that standard is and what it's meeting, I mean, there's no, I know the drawings were provided, but there's really no markings or numbers to really understand what that is. A little bit surprising that the township traffic safety officer wasn't even included in this, because I do appreciate it's a county road, but I would have expected that at least our township, traffic safety officer would have been included in the assessment. We know our local roads, and I would think that we would at least have the ability to also review that from that perspective. The 15-foot clearing, I have another question on that. When you're saying 15 feet, is it 15 feet beyond the 8 feet? So, or is that inclusive of the 8 foot? So like, how much are we really clearing? Because I guess to Stacy's comment, on the one side, you are clearing quite a bit of buffer, and at least for the residents thereafter, what kind of privacy or reassurances that they have that it'll be brought back to sort of the normal, natural privacy that they have today. The clearing, I know Mr. Lloyd had commented on also some clearing on the road. I think, again, just as much as we could have that visit at the site to really understand that clearing, because in some cases that would be clearing potentially property owners' landscaping that they've already installed there in that 10-foot right-of-way. Do you understand what I'm saying, Stacy? I'm saying it sounds like the clearing that they're doing to make the site distance is probably clearing landscaping on people's property potentially.
Okay, I thought we had a 30-foot buffer, but, okay.
Well, but I
understand.
know, I mean, I appreciate residents don't always understand what the easement rights are, so we do plantings. It's the same thing when we try to put in sidewalks, right? Sometimes it's on there just to understand, at least for the residents out there, what would actually be cleared. I know, sorry. Thank you.
Should we wait for all the questions and then address them? Or?
No, it's okay, you could, that was a lot, if you want to go ahead and address those, and then we'll have the next person up.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll see how that goes, I might change my mind. but
Cat
we'll
luck.
finish it.
Yeah, is there clearing on the right of way of neighbors?
I did identify there's one tree that
Okay.
is recommended, that's in the right of way, and it's just close to the edge of road, and so that is something that's is recommended to be removed. The first comment was regarding the commitment from the county. I'm not aware of that. They've actually given a commitment on what actually, when their time frame is. I know when they, certainly they're supportive of the project because they actually gave us the design grant. I think they recognized, even when we had the design grant, that $1 million project was never gonna happen with local funding. It would only happen with, federal funding happening to make this trail constructed. And I know that the counties had, more and more interest regarding what they were doing on their property once we secured that federal grant. I know that they've actually represented to the administrator and I that they were going to step up to secure an easement for their portion of the property. I think they approached the Millers, and then they also approached the property owner adjacent to the Millers. So, they have shown that they are moving forward with their portion. It didn't seem like the communication's there. And I believe they're in negotiations right now, I believe, to even purchase the Miller's property. So that's all part of their process and their commitment to take it to the next step. So, I'm sure that the committee can certainly reach out to the county and get a more affirmative date or something from them. I think they'd be more than willing to offer that. The sidewalk standards, they're dictated by the DOT standards and then also Morris County standards. They have specific design standards that have to be met. They are, the approval is they have their engineering department that's going to review it and ultimately issue a road opening permit. They have, we typically don't obtain a road opening permit now because it has to be taken out by the contractor that does the work. So that's why we don't have a road opening permit from them. But with every project that we do on a county road, even with the ADA project that we're just doing, we work with them from the very beginning of a project concept to the final design, and they give their approval, at least from the engineering department, giving us assurance that they're going to issue a permit to the contractor once we secure the contractor. So we work hand in hand with the county through the entire process. And also, there's going to be even a third party reviewing the site distance, and the DOT is going to certainly review it as part of their process, and they're going to be looking at the survey that was done, the site distance that's being representative. So there are two agencies that are going to be, in fact, reviewing the sidewalk construction and making sure that it meets appropriate standards. The 15-foot clearing is total. That includes the path. So we're clearing just a minimal amount. The intent of the path is to keep it as natural as possible. We did not want to have massive clearing. We're trying to preserve the land as much as possible. So, and in fact, some of the locations that the alignment we were even looking at, moving the alignment. Even you can see on this end, we were trying to move it. A little jog here was probably saving some trees to eliminate that. The boardwalk, there aren't any substantial trees in this general area, and we didn't necessarily. A boardwalk is more difficult to have a jog in it, so we wanted to generally have the boardwalk with straight runs. And so, we did do an alignment because we had such a narrow path. We were able to shift it in order to try to minimize the amount of larger trees. Not only to preserve the trees, but it's a cost associated with removing a tree. It's not cheap. So, but it is a 15-foot clearance that we are doing. And for the most part, if you look on the opposite side of Green Village, you can see when the developed parts of all the properties here, they have a nice front yard. It's open. When you look at the town property, it hasn't had any maintenance to it whatsoever. So we've just, the woods have basically encroached. They're almost right into the right of way. So the intent is to clean up that right of way, and within the right of way, at 10 foot off the curb line, and just clean that area up so that when you step out, you're not stepping out from the woods automatically. There's going to be an area where people actually see you even before you get to the ADA ramp that is the point where you start crossing the road. And so there is a tree that's located, I believe, in this Vendrell vicinity that is proposed to be removed. The rest of this is all low-lying vegetation. You can see through it, so we do have the site distance going over, but there's a tree in this location that was identified and the county identified as need to be removed. I think I addressed all of
That's what I'm looking.
Those site distances are established by survey.
Yeah, the survey. Yeah, they're established by a survey. Yeah, the whole road was surveyed.
Okay. Any other questions? And I think I will, now ask for all the questions, and then we'll have John answer. It'll just make things move a little faster. But come on up.
Robert Orban, O-R-T-M-A-N, 365 and 355 Green Village Road. So, if I might.
Yeah.
I live here with my family, and I have this house that I rent here.
Mhm.
And I think the measurements might be off a little, because I saw where you guys put the plastic flags through the woods, and it's coming kind of close on 355, on the back corner, as you mentioned. I don't know how safe, I don't know how safe, in a personal opinion, these sight lines are, because I almost die every time I come out of my driveway, and I look at these sight lines, both left and right. So I would love some more. I mean, you've been wonderful on giving us detail now, which I'm kind of surprised that we're talking in such detail about this now, when we're so far into this plan, it seems. But I really, really would love to have the committee and whoever else, the chief, whoever, anybody come and actually walk from here all the way through, because we're gonna need a boat, we're gonna need a traffic officer, and we might see some wildlife that probably shouldn't be disturbed, really, quite honestly. So I'm just kind of surprised that I understand when you get a grant, you either use it or lose it, right? I'm really surprised that we're not using this money on Fairmount Avenue, or all these roads that are terrible in town, but we're making a quarter-mile boardwalk path that could disturb wildlife, that could possibly not even get done, maybe 10%, 5%, because it's too wet. We're gonna bore sample, of course. But to a land of nowhere, where we get from the county, there's a potential for a parking lot and a communal bathroom. So making it personal, again, it's between my two properties, which is just gonna tear through, and there's my safety, privacy, and everything, which, that's personal. But then I might be living across the street from a parking lot and a bathroom, which the township says it's the county says it's the township, and here we are trying to get clarity today. I mean, I have a million more questions, but probably not gonna get it all out in 3 minutes. Those are the most important things. Sightlines, pedestrian safety, traffic safety, household safety, wildlife. And can't we just go through, does it make more sense to go from Nashville, do a bathroom there maybe? Use those walkways that come through the apartments and come up to Melrose and cross the street there, and then go out into the woods where there's already a path. It's already there. I know I mentioned that last time I was here, but it just doesn't make sense, all this, for that much, when there's so many other things to do. And yes, it is slightly personal, I get it, but it just really, it doesn't make sense to me, the whole thing. And I think there's more to it. Not saying that we haven't turned over every leaf or rock or stone, but I just think there's more things to it than this. So,
Thank you.
again, thank you guys for your time.
And feel free, if you didn't get through your questions, to send them in, we'll
Thank you very
answer.
much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Heil. I live on Green Village Road, H-E-Y-L. John, I'm wondering, I don't know if you guys have really taken into account how wet this is back here.
Yes.
That is,
Yeah.
it doesn't dry up in the summertime.
No.
I grew up there 55 years. Grew up playing back in here. It doesn't dry out. How are you gonna get a boring machine back there? That's gonna be a major disturbance. So Bo's got a lot of valid points there. So, that's really what I have right now.
Thank you.
Curran, 365 Green Village Road. To add to Robert's, let me just took a couple notes. Number one, will we have access to these plans? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Bite my tongue.
If so, I would request that we receive them. What type of fencing will be installed if this project does move forward? When closed, what deters people from walking on the path? Is there going to be a lock? Is there going to be something for our safety? Obviously, we have a family there. It's obviously affecting us. So that's a big concern of mine. And also people seeing simply through our house, yard, our privacy. We live there. We've enjoyed. The reason I moved to Green Village Road with my child is because of the privacy. And now we're losing that. So that's a big concern of ours. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have any other questions? Anything on Zoom?
Yes.
We'll take the rest of the questions and then we'll ask John to
Ms.
respond.
Stewart?
Hi, my name is Stuart Carr, C-A-R-R, from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township. I do not live anywhere near Green Village Road. Crestwood Drive is a mile and a half away, 2 miles away. I agree, frankly, with the last 3 or 4 folks from Green Village Road area. I don't think that there's a need, notwithstanding that we have it in the master plan, to cut through a substantial wetlands area and disturb wildlife and all kinds of other things when we could simply go around through the apartments and get back on Green Village Road that way. It's very nice. It's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. We had this grant, like the gentleman said, so let's spend the money. I think, again, even though we can't repurpose it for something else, it's better, I think, to just give the money back and, at the worst case, have a dirt trail as opposed to macadam for the 2 ends of it, and do that. So it's something like the Great Swamp Outdoor Education Center type of convention versus the Lewanika Reservation, where everything is just macadam. Because at some point you have macadam, you may end up with bikes and all kinds of other stuff through there, even though you have the the walkway. So on the one hand, I like the idea of trails, but to Mr. Heil's point, with all the wetlands and everything that are in there, I think the downside of disturbing that wetlands, disturbing that area, greatly outweighs the convenience and absolutely the back to nature upside of being able to walk through there. We got the Great Swamp Outdoor Education Center. We have miles and miles on the Lewanika Reservation. For this small portion, let's walk around Southern Boulevard, around Hickory Tree or Hickory Place, whatever it is, and get back on Green Village. And if we need to deal with safety on Green Village, let's do a sidewalks program or something on Green Village, or a safety program on Green Village Road to connect with Lewanika Reservation that way, as opposed to cutting through a substantial wetland right here. Because again, it is a terrific resource. If we cut it up a little bit, it's death by 1,000 cuts. So again, I think if we can reconsider this, notwithstanding, do a Rick Scott in Florida, send the money back to the feds and say, look, thanks, but no thanks. Or again, at the extreme, just do it where we have a dirt path only. So, and the final question or comment on that is, Mr. Rutschke, if you can indicate roughly what the total amount is. I think you said somewhere around 1/4 mile, about how many feet is the path and how the wood, and approximately how many feet at each end will be the macadam. Thank you, and thanks again for your time and consideration on this.
Thank you. Any other questions online?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing for the Green Village Connector Trail, and John, I'll ask you to answer those questions.
Okay. The first question was related to the number of flags that are out there, and I have to say there's a lot of flags out there, because we flagged all the wetlands, we flagged the alignment, we flagged the limit of the clearing that we were directing to the contractor. So I think I'd have to defer to anyone to defer to the plan regarding what the true alignment's going to be. I don't think you can get really a true representation of, unless you know exactly what that flag is, you can't get a real true representation of what it is going. So I would suggest just to review the plans. The plans are posted on the website. It's under engineering. However, I think the link isn't working today. But
yeah, there's a notice just for the benefit of the public. The website has been migrating over to a new provider, so any files that are not available there, if the link is there, you can just email us and we will send them to you until they're uploaded.
Okay, so they are online. The site distance, again, I believe I've already responded to that regarding the site distance. The funding is through a federal program. It's a very competitive program, and the the program that we went through, it does not apply to sidewalks. So this, and even if we wanted to, it's just completely out of the program to support a sidewalk project. So that would have to be a different funding program to go through that. There really isn't, when you're applying for this, the grant, it's a very competitive program. It's a national program. And the DOT does not entertain taking the funds and applying it to somewhere else, because it's just unfair to someone else who had another project that was considered, the project was evaluated the grant was given specifically for a project which justified getting the funds, so they would not allow that to change over. Melrose is a private road, so we did not look at encroaching onto that private property. The proposal was to keep it within township property. The soils are extremely wet. That's why we have a boardwalk that's being constructed, and it's very similar to the conditions that if you go to the Great Swamp Watershed, the refuge, their park, that you can walk out on the similar boardwalks that are there. And in fact, I even consulted with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, talking to them regarding construction methods, who their contractors that bid on their projects, and just got some insight regarding, the means and methods that were used for the construction on those trails. Wildlife, this project was reviewed extensively through U.S. Fish and Wildlife and New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, and we have a whole host of restrictions on timing and such of what we can and can't do with the construction of the project. So it is highly regulated, and there's a lot of sensitivity regarding wildlife in the area. One of the interest of this pathway was agree or disagree, but it was actually trying to get more in access to a very pristine area that allows the public to really appreciate the wetlands and the wildlife that's there. So that's the kind of one of the goals of the project, was the fact to get that interaction. I addressed access to the plans. Fencing, there is no fencing proposed on the township property. The county has indicated when they were proposing an easement either on the Millers or the adjoining property, they were going to install fencing. I don't know if they are going to continue offer fencing or what they do. I don't know their proposed plans, but we can certainly express interest. The county has been very open to suggestions on the improvements, so if that certainly reached out to them. Locking and closing the trail, it's something that has not been finalized regarding if in fact it's going to be closed at night, or if it's just going to be regulated the same way with any park property that the township owns. It's so that's something to just work out with administratively how we regulate that. I think if it does become an issue or a problem, the police will pull in and see how we mitigate any concerns or issues that come out with the park. And the asphalt surface, that was actually a requirement of the county. They wanted that as part of the base of the design when they offered the grant. Initially, we were proposing a gravel surface similar to what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife does. And that's something that we can certainly go back and talk to the county again if the committee has an interest of, initially that's what we wanted, to have it similar, very similar to Fish and Wildlife, what they had. We can revisit that and see if that's something that we want to entertain. I think the DOT wouldn't have a problem with that, and I don't even think we have to go back to the DEP with any permitting. So the asphalt surface, we can certainly revisit that with the county, but that was something that they were adamant on when we went for the design assistance grant, that they wanted to have that being asphalt surface. And the length and details, I don't have that offhand. Again, the plans are located will be located eventually online that we can, the link isn't working, but it will be. And essentially we have you'll see that there's a stationing associated with it, and the stationing is every 100 feet, so you can see exactly the dimensions and the layout, and everything is online that you can see. So I think I addressed all the questions.
That's okay from everything I have.
It's approximately a mile, right?
Yeah, yep.
It's a mile, okay. Okay, unfortunately, we have a packed schedule, so we have to move on. I am fine with doing a site visit at some point. Maybe we'll plan when that's appropriate, depending on, how far along we are. I'm fine with it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm debating, should we go to finance? Thank you.
There are a couple other things under engineering.
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
we just have to
I'll
wrap
try to be quick.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one, before we get to the report, so we did the trail, there is, to the road repaving, we started talking about that at the last workshop meeting.
Okay.
You know, that there were some folks that went out and did a visit of the location as well, and, yeah, just wanted to finalize that, so.
Yeah, there was, at the last meeting, we've identified 4 additional roads, basically a neighborhood to include. It included Gates, Mitchell, Garden, and Conger. Milling and paving those roads would add an additional $132,000. The original estimate and recommended budget for paving this year was $398,000. This would bring it up to $530,000.
And we budgeted 500,000, right? In the capital plan?
Correct, we did have 500, initially, we haven't adopted the capital budget, but that was tentative what we were expecting. The next meeting, we are gonna be talking about an intersection upgrade, safety upgrade over at, River and, where is it? The chief will be speaking about it, which is a county intersection, so that's gonna cost us about 100 to 150,000, so that's where, we put in a little bit more into the roads budget for these kinds of things that come up that are not necessarily directly road paving, but road related. So curbing, sidewalk repairs, things like that. So, I recommend that we stay on the prudent side of things and keep it to the lower end, but that's your decision.
Sorry, you lost
Yeah.
me. I thought you were going in a different, I thought you were trying to say there was room in the other 150,000 you had set aside.
No, there's a cushion, so, the 500 is there's a cushion, because you never know what ends up happening with the prices when we actually go out, plus there's other things that come up throughout the year related to the road, so the 500 is not just the road paving, but roads and other related road matters. So the next meeting, the police chief's gonna be speaking here, he's gonna, be talking about an intersection that needs upgrade, the traffic signal over there needs upgrade, and that's a county agreement that they would enter into, so we'd need about $100 to $150,000 for that as well. So that would come from this 500 if it was available.
So we're saying 500, so you're saying 132,000 over, or we hit 532,000 just on road paving, but we budgeted
correct.
500,000, that includes
That's what we
roads
anticipate, we didn't budget
plus.
it yet, so in the capital presentation
in the
today,
capital
you'll see
plan.
yes.
But when
yeah,
you were thinking about interests,
Yes.
All
it was
that kind of
500,
stuff, it was based on 500.
correct,
Okay.
correct. So this would be over that, and not really allow for a cushion for other things.
Okay. And Gates was the one that was like number 2 in terms of needing to get done. Mitchell was in much better shape.
Better shape,
relatively
but still
speaking.
lower. It would have creeped up. I think, if this is not paved this year, certainly I could see that being,
Next year.
next year. But yeah, but the only 2 roads that are in better shape is Garden and Conger. And, I would think that, we're gonna regret not doing those. If we do the whole neighborhood and not do those roads, they're relatively minor roads. And certainly on Garden, there is an issue over there regarding, the road is extremely flat, and we could try to improve some of the, a flat area that floods, and get the water to move by milling the road a little differently. And so it's something that, you hear a lot of negative feedback on that if we don't do those 2.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we want to go through the capital plan, and then we can decide. But either way, this is workshop, so we're figuring out.
Yeah, it'll inform capital. The, the question is, do we stick to the original draft or the, updated draft?
Okay.
portion of the road paving for 2024. And John, when do you need an answer on that?
You know, always the sooner the better, so we can line the paving up. Rich.
Well, yeah, 'cause we want to award the contract.
Yeah, because it's not just awarding the contract, DPW needs to, you know, and I've already told them the roads that we're doing, but they do prep work. You know,
Right.
this is not something that we just get a contractor in. They work on the basins, they do repairs throughout the road, and they prep the road and get it ready so that we have mill and pave. You know, the later we go, it's harder and harder to get it. You know, we like to do it in July and August when, you know, the summer's out. But it's hard, that's when every town wants to do it, so it's, you know, the sooner we can get on the contractor's schedule, the better.
Okay. And was John, anything else? Did you have anything else?
Yes,
over?
the Morris County Trail Construction Grant, the county did send a letter to everybody. I think made sure to try and include that in this agenda packet, get some ideas from you. Normally, you know, as you heard from the Green Village Connector Trail, we look to the master plan, we look to other documents that guide where we want to go. But you know, I know that everybody wants to have some input into things like this, so we wanted to open the conversation to the governing body to see if you had some ideas.
Yeah,
John,
if I can just give just one, you know, suggestion is that the Morris County Trails Grant has turned into a very complicated process. I can spend a couple $100 and get $1 million from the DOT, and now it takes thousands of dollars to get something from Morris County on these trails. It's just a very extensive process of meeting in the field and multiple meetings, and just the paperwork that they're required is very extensive. And they've made it clear last year, they've had well over $2 million to give out, and they denied multiple applications because they weren't 100% bid ready and all the permits obtained. And so I would discourage submitting an application for construction without having the plans 100%, and the county it basically says you're done, you're ready to submit the grant. You know, we did receive a design assistance grant for the Phase 2 hillside. We submitted that last year, and the county didn't we didn't get a grant. And in fact, I've submitted grants the prior years to Morris County, which the design wasn't even further along, and we've gotten construction grants. And so, you know, they really made it clear that they want these construction plans to be 100% if you're asking for construction. And so we have the hillside set of drawings. The county provided comments on those. I've made all those revisions, and I've been waiting for months to hear back from them regarding you know, the final revisions on that. So unless we have you know, clear approval from the county on the hillside plans, I would say we may want to target that to be a 2025 project versus 2024. Maybe, you know, we can pull those together at the very end, but that's what I'm projecting, is that it's going to be more of a 2025 project. So really, they offer design assistance, or they provide construction. And for construction, it has to be 100% permitted and everything if you're going to go for a construction grant. So really, we may want to wait and see if hillside can be advanced, that they approve it before we apply. Because I don't want to waste the money. I don't want to go through this process again, only for them to deny it because they haven't you know, approved the plans. Or we consider another alternative trail and go for another design assistance.
For design assistance.
We can design assistance.
Thank you.
So you're recommending that we don't submit anything because we don't have anything that's really construction ready, from a construction?
From a construction grant. You know, I don't want to go through I wouldn't recommend going through that whole process again just to get denied because, you know, the county has not, you know, has not approved the plans yet.
Okay.
And we just recently were pushing them, and then actually they apologized for not getting back to us, and they were actually going to have the supervisor look at the plans to try and get back to us. But, you know, until they get back to us and tell us that the plans are ready, you know, I just don't want to misrepresent. I don't want to apply the grant, we don't get it again, and say, what's going on? What are you doing wrong? You know, I'm just telling you up front that the writing's on the wall that they want the plans to be 100%.
When is the grant submission due?
I think July is the initial intent. It may have been sooner, maybe in June is the initial intent that you have to identify a project, and then the actual, see how it is, you have to just make an intent, make a letter of intent, and then you actually have the full application goes, and it follows it. And then there's a whole nother process after that, and so it's just a lot.
Application due July 31st, letter of intent June 28th.
So if they surprised you and turned it around because the supervisor's looking at it now, or it's
Yeah,
still not ready because.
Still not ready, so, so if we can get this done by June 30th and the letter of intent, then this may be the project we wanna submit, but, unless we have the DOT, the Morris County blessing the plan, saying, yeah, you're ready, and then we should submit.
Okay. From a design perspective, were there any suggestions you had, or does anybody else have anything of interest from a design perspective, trail design?
I don't have nothing at the moment, maybe something that we wanna reach out to the open space, and maybe their group may wanna consider something or proposing.
I would strongly suggest that we either contact Open Space, let them have something to do with it, and Historical Society too, because this trail basically comes from their parking lot, right? And it follows the old Snake Hill.
Yeah.
And it must meander the way the old Snake Hill.
Yeah,
road
this
was.
phase 2 connects the phase 1 trail in 2 different locations, one at the schoolhouse, and then the other one at the intersection of River Road and Hillside, right there that you can go in. So ultimately, it does connect with Chatham Glen. That whole Chatham sidewalk network is connected to the Toll Brothers project, and now it's connected to here. So we're getting connectivity regarding with it.
But it would be nice if the Historical Society could, think about maybe some sort of a placard or something descriptive. I just put our people to use. I mean, they're as a resource.
Absolutely. Get them involved in it. I agree.
Yeah, and then hopefully we can avoid, like what we had tonight with the Green Village Connector. The more people we involve, the more we can reflect on.
Just so I'm clear, though, the question was about design submission,
Mm-hmm.
trail design submission. So we could definitely get them involved.
Yeah.
But the Historical Society is with respect to phase 2, which is already designed, and we're waiting to see if we can submit for
Yeah,
construction.
before the
Yeah.
design is ready, we can touch base with them, make sure they're aware.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Oh, they're thrilled about it.
Yeah, because they get people coming by.
Yeah.
Some traffic.
Good, so let's get proponents as opposed to
Yeah.
opponents.
Yeah, at this point, I don't have a recommendation. It might defer to the open space or other departments or groups to look at.
Open Space is set to meet the end of the month, this month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's only for trails. It does not, the grant will not cover any sidewalks or anything.
Right.
It's just trails.
Right.
Okay. So you'll bring that back to open space?
Sure.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Okay. Any other questions on my report or anything while I'm in front of them?
I think you covered a lot today.
I just had
I
one.
had the out and
I had one question on the report just regarding Colony Pool.
Yes.
It's in the report, it says Colony Pool engineering work has begun for the wall.
Mhm.
But we, I don't know what stage that puts us at, but we wanted a chance to have an input. I think this committee decided wanted to have the chance to have an input of just the Colony Pool to meet, and that's scheduled for tomorrow, just to have, some input onto.
Okay, I think the general design, based on the feedback that the committee from the last meeting, the thought was to change the slope walls to vertical walls. And make them deeper at the point where and so that if you ever wanted to accommodate, putting a concrete floor in or other changes in that location, we can accommodate it. So that's the basic design change or concept that we're doing. If you could just get their feedback on that, that's what.
I will. And the only other thing I have, just about that is we have 6 lanes now, but also kind of a half lane because of the sloped wall. So that
Mhm.
would put us to 7 lanes. And then there's an elimination of stairs and then ladder. So I don't know.
Yeah, those details can certainly.
It's
yeah.
detailed stuff, but
Yeah.
people that use the club all the time might have some thought about that.
Yeah, I think we're definitely will have a preliminary set of drawings, going at, and then those type of details are good, just to get it before it's finalized. But that's the major change, is going from a vertical wall, and that would just open that up to allow it to accommodate and make it safer. Some of those soils, going down that slope is kind of, can be challenging at times.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's particularly dangerous for visitors because we have a whole visiting team and then they're climbing the wall because they're not familiar with the
Yeah.
club, so.
Yeah. So we can have multiple ladders and things like that, no diving off, you know, what you typically see in a pool, so,
Very good.
Thank you.
okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay.
I'm sorry,
So
what
I'm
is?
gonna,
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think, I'm just wondering if we should do,
Finance, since Debbie's here, and the capital plan, or do you want?
capital plan is gonna be a chunk of time too.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right, let's do, finance so we can get through that section.
Sure. Come on up, Debbie. Hey, do you want me to start with the ordinances and resolutions or the capital presentation first?
Let's get through the rest first and then we'll do the capital presentation.
Okay. The first item, under finance, it's listed there, it's a, ordinance, not much detail on it, but I'll explain, it's pretty easy. We have, in section 2-69, an ordinance on the cooperative pricing agreement, with Cranford. It's just part of my review of ordinances and cleanup with Greg and other department heads. So this one, we're just looking to repeal this ordinance. It's a simple one. We don't need to have ordinances that detail these. That's not really a typical practice. And also, it's out of date, and every time we join a co-op anyways, we do it by resolution. And so this whole section 2-69 could be eliminated. So that's what we're proposing for the next meeting.
Okay.
Next one is cancellation of our bond authorization. This is the bond authorization we're referring to is the one for the Fensky property. As I mentioned originally when we introduced it, that it was there as a sort of a backup to make sure we had that tool available to us if we need it. We did review the matter with the Finance Committee, if I may say so. Right?
Yes.
And after review with Debbie and I, and looking at our cash flow for the open space fund and future projections, we don't need that bond authorization. We have the cash on hand to make that payment. So we are proposing that we adopt a resolution to cancel that bond authorization, and we would pay that all out of the open space fund.
Okay, any questions?
The next one is a resolution on our purchasing policy and procedures manual. The last time this was updated, I believe it was in 2014. So Debbie and Ed did a great job on updating, refreshing that. Two things with it. One, it reflects practices that we've instituted that are best practices, that are reflective of some of the changes that we've made, both with purchase orders, requisitions, our use of admins, and also updating it to reflect changes in the public contracts law and the procurement card process, the budget cycle, all these things, and Debbie and Ed captured all that in writing. I would say, the 2014 manual could just kind of be ignored, and this was a fresh start on everything. It's got some quick reference guides, both for employees and for you. This is a great document for you to have, so that it has the force of the governing body, and this is what you do. You adopt policy. We're recommending this manual to you. It has been reviewed by the Finance Committee. And Debbie, is there anything else you want to add to it?
No, there was a new change to one of the, for the public purchasing, the claimant certification. We can eliminate that on a purchase order, and that is something, another resolution that we're going to adopt, so that we can incorporate that into the policy. It'll make the process of payment faster. There are a couple exclusions that the state requires. Sole proprietors, we still need a claimant certification, and any individual employee for reimbursements. And then anything else we determine that we would want a signature, we can still declare that we get the signature from the claimant.
So that changes in this draft. So we'd like to incorporate it in this manual by way of adoption of the manual, and then by state law, we have to do a resolution to make that change on the claimant signature portion. So improves efficiency in the office, cuts down on a lot of paperwork of department heads and the finance department having to track down vendors for the signature, and cuts down on that, and also just makes it
A faster process
yeah.
to get the bill paid to the vendor.
Because there's been times where 2-3 months ago, and we're waiting on the vendor to get us that signature. We don't really need it, but we need it because that's how our current policy is, and we haven't done a resolution to waive that.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
And then finally banking services. Debbie's been great in, in helping with this. We've met with 3 banks. Our incumbent was one of them. We reviewed I'm sorry, Finance Committee. Did you have anything on the claimant signature person policy manual?
No.
No, okay, sorry. Banking service, so we met with 3 banks over the last couple months. Really negotiated quite vigorously with them, and we've gone from, what's our current average interest rate?
We were below 4% when we started this project, and now currently we are at 4.6.
Which is also being locked in until the second rate drop by the Fed as well. And we're getting some additional bonuses. One thing that's been a point for me is to get us courier service, so armored car service, which we'll be getting 3 times a week out of the bank now at no cost to us as well, which helps, you know, in terms of security, because right now an employee is making the deposit, leaving town. So not only is it a safety issue, a security issue, and also saves that employee from having to leave their desk for however long they have to do to take care of that. So all around, I think it's a win, and we're getting check capture devices as well, so that way checks can be remotely scanned and deposited immediately as well, which also helps with accuracy and efficiency too. So it's been something that since I got here, I had mentioned to Debbie day one, we haven't done a banking RFP, so we started the negotiations to see if we'd get something good. We did. We presented the options to the Finance Committee, and correct, you're endorsing our switch. So we would be staying with TD Bank, and Ms. Cafoni is preparing a resolution and agreement with them to memorialize these terms.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
We'll go to the report.
Yeah,
If there's
if
any
anybody has
questions on the
any questions on the Finance Committee report for April. And if not, we'll move to the capital presentation.
Mouse doesn't work from over there that well. Come over here. All right, Mayor, Committee, thank you. This is I think the first type of capital presentation that the governing body has probably gotten on something like this. And I want to thank the Finance Committee as well for, may have to get a little closer. There we go. All right. I want to thank the Finance Committee, which is Deputy Mayor Michael Choi, Committeewoman Jen Rowland, and our CFO, Debbie King. Debbie, as always, is a wealth of knowledge and does a great job responding to any requests for information and preparing reports that are needed. And she was a big help in putting this plan together. This is going to go over the 7-year capital plan, which was outlined in our budget that you adopted last month, but goes into a little bit more detail on that and gives you first a snapshot, because I think it's important to understand our current debt situation. We have about $18 million in debt currently outstanding. That is made up of a 2013 bond, a 2022 bond, and a 2023 note. That last document, that note is the affordable housing, almost 1.5 million or so. That's what makes up that last note. So we just rolled that over actually fairly recently, but that's counted in this outstanding debt. We have bond principal in the amount of approximately $800,000, bond interest in the amount of $527,000, and ban interest in $115,000. Now, $115,000 is from that note that I just spoke about. So that is how we, it changes year to year based on the debt schedule that Debbie tracks, but that is what makes up our approximate annual payments for our debt service in the operating budget every year. And this is just talking about general capital and affordable housing obligations. This is not talking about the open space fund or WPC. In both cases we do, well, WPC, that's a self-liquidating utility. We don't really have any issues there in terms of affecting taxes or changing the rate. And then same thing with our open space fund, it's set at 2%, unless the governing body takes action to decrease it. And we, to the extent possible, as long as it's 2%, we fulfill our obligations from an operating perspective, but then also try to pay down whatever debt we have, or eliminate the options of debt if we don't need them.
Mr. Shoddy, it's 2 cents, right?
2 cents.
2 cents, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just for the public, because it sounded like 2%.
Yeah, cents.
Cents, correct. So capital financing, as part of that process, both during the budget review and then as we put this together, we look at what our existing capital accounts currently have in them. And as of just today, we've got about $1 million in existing capital accounts. Now, it's important to note that these existing capital accounts is not just it's money sitting there with nothing to do. In many cases, it's part of ongoing or incompleted projects, things like road repaving projects, take for example the municipal roof, work over at the tennis courts, all these kinds of things that are still not closed out, or they're maybe in the design phase, they're in the contract award phase, or John's building the design specs for them. So the money is there for that use, and in order for us to award contracts, that funding has to be available, so that way Debbie can issue a certificate of available funds and you can authorize that resolution to make that award. So we do have about $1 million there. Anything that was earmarked, and let's say that project is completed, that's where we tap into first before looking to authorize more debt or appropriate more money in the capital improvement fund for a project. We look at what do we have in existing capital accounts. We do that annually, and we also, if there are accounts that are very old, we will cancel those out or reallocate them. The capital reserve has just about $30,000 in it, and that is dedicated already. The capital fund balance started out with about $425,000, and it's down to about $22,000 this year based off of our budget. That is $100,000 going to revenue for the current budget, and $303,000 went into that, made up that money from that canceled debt for affordable housing, I believe it was last year. That was what made the 1.9 million we needed down to about 1.5. So that's coming out of the capital fund balance. And then our capital improvement fund this year, as part of the budget that you adopted, that appropriated $900,000 there. And then finally, we would issue debt in cases where, through those things above, there isn't enough money to meet the capital plan. So capital planning, I'd say there's a new formal process that we started last year, getting everybody used to this, getting them involved in this process. It applies to both our general budget, our open space, and our WPC. The water pollution control, that's our sewer utility. So depending on what that use is, it's allocated to those. Under general, and those are the items I listed below, we categorize them under administration, engineering, public works, parks and rec, police, and fire. And I put these buckets, the items or the requests under these categories, but this is just really an internal mechanism. There's no guidelines on this, but administration, you'll see in our budget, you put things like affordable housing, because where else would it go? All these sort of catch-all items would fall under administration. Anything like special requests, maybe the library, again, we'd stick that under administration. So here's a 7-year outlook. This was the top line, where it says capital requests year by year. That was what was in the operating and the budget that you adopted. The numbers have adjusted slightly in this document from that budget every year, again, because that's just a planning tool. It's not set in stone, it's not firm, you adopt it, you're just coming up with estimates. This is a more current review after the department heads gave it, I think, a third look, right? A third attempt at fine-tuning it. So you'll see from 24 to 2030 what the capital requests are. CIF and DP, that's our capital improvement fund, and down payment. So there's an asterisk there because that's an assumption that we're making. Obviously, we don't know what future budgets look like, but the assumption is that there's $800,000 appropriated in each year in that budget which would account for, into the capital improvement fund, which would account for either all the projects, if you could do them, which is what we did in 2023, everything fit under a capital improvement fund, or it would be used for a down payment as well if we were expecting that we were going to issue debt. So whatever you would be paying out of cash would be reduced by the amount of the down payment that would be required for any issuance of debt. So you'll see that math subtracting the 800 across the board, and that's what we're talking about here in that new debt row of what we're expecting that new debt would be issued. That's minus the down payment or whatever is available in the capital improvement fund. The debt payments row is based on a great calculation Debbie put together, a very comprehensive spreadsheet for me that put together this sort of hypothetical of if you were issuing bands based off of these numbers, what the current, under our current obligations for outstanding debt plus new debt that would be issued, what those debt payments would look like year after year. So that final line shows you what that delta is in terms of just the debt payments year to year. That debt payment is what goes into the capital budget, into the operating budget, which is also what impacts taxes and our appropriations. So you'll see, 2024, for example, there's assuming that the capital plan we're talking about is implemented, an increase of $128,000 in debt payments over the previous year, and you'll see that carry on. And in some areas that increase is less because what we've requested in the capital, or what's being requested by the different department heads, is a smaller amount. And I'll go into those in just a second. I do want to mention also that in this, the capital request, the department heads do the best they can to come up with cost estimates, but between now and 2028, 2029, market conditions change, costs can go up. So this does not account for what those potentials might be, the cost of a vehicle going up, the cost of any piece of equipment. And this also assumes bond issuance. So in bond anticipation notes, that is, the payments are only being made on interest. Anything so far, Debbie, that you want to add?
Interest only for the first 3 years. Following that, you have to then make a payment on principal, and it's a calculation that's formulated 2 times the useful life minus 1 into your debt. And so that would be a piece that would become part of our debt service for those years. And so every year, that new debt has 3 years. Then the following year, that debt has 3 years. So each one has its own calculation. It's not the full debt. It's each of the ordinances separately.
So there's a number of assumptions here that obviously based on, she said life and all these different, that you can't really come up with an exact figure, but we tried our best to put a projection together here. So going through 2024, right, broke down that portion of it to the left. That's the slice of the part for the chart before. This is what makes up, and these are rounded, but this is what makes up that capital request. What you'll see here are some of the larger items, which is why this is that kind of sharp peak in that 7-year plan. We've got $300,000 in additional affordable housing obligations that we have to meet for a developers agreement. That's the group homes on River Road. We've got 2 apparatus vehicle, the 2 apparatus for the fire departments, totaling about $3.25. Now we did apply for grants for those, but there's no certainty we're going to get them, and we also want to plan for those in the event that we don't get those. But in order for the departments to go ahead and make that selection and for us to make the award of a contract, we have to have that appropriation made so Debbie can do a certificate of available funding. And with all of this stuff here, just because the appropriation has been made, it doesn't mean we're actually going out to borrow it right then and there. That's simply the authorization, so we don't have to borrow that full amount all right away. We could, depending on what the structure of that contract is, in some cases you're just making a down payment, maybe initial deposit, and the timing of when that is, it may not, you're not going to issue all of that all at once. And that's where Debbie, with our financial advisors and bond counsel, come in to make those decisions and to time it as best as they can. Aside from the apparatus, the fire departments also are requesting some significant equipment there in the amount of $530,000. That's radios, turnout gear, SCBA tanks, which turnout gear and the tanks they have on a rotation basis, so that way they're not doing everything all at once. And the same thing goes for the PD vehicles. The chief here has 2 vehicles, and you'll see these recurring each year. About 2 vehicles that every year he's trying to replace, so that way the fleet's not all being replaced at once, which is a very smart move. And then DPW also some vehicles, things like salt spreaders and plows and trucks that need to be updated and upgraded. So, and every year you will see that road resurfacing amount also of $500,000. 2025, slightly less, actually significantly less, but the category's pretty much the same. Instead of those big ticket apparatus, we have 1 apparatus for Green Village in the amount of about $500,000, and some more fire department equipment, and they have their facilities which need some assistance. That is some radios as well, plus issue with one of the bays. So they've requested $441,000. PD vehicles and equipment, $250,000, and same thing with DPW vehicles and equipment. If you'd like me to go into those in more detail, certainly I can pull those up. But I will say the department heads are very judicious with what they're requesting, and definitely Rich in DPW is very frugal, and he tries to squeeze out every last mile he can out of a vehicle. But they do put a lot of miles on these vehicles, especially if they're doing salting and plowing. These vehicles take quite a beating. So, definitely want to support them in that regards. And if not for these sort of one-time, these big expenses like the apparatus or radios, as we did last year, we probably could fit all these within our capital improvement fund of $800,000 to $900,000. But we've got these big ticket items, and that's what's going to result in us having to issue some debt. Yes?
Green Village apparatus, okay, you have another
Sorry.
one here then.
Yes.
Just a second.
Yep, so 2026, the big thing here to note, because everything else is pretty similar, is the Green Village apparatus. They're expecting another one of theirs coming due for 2026 for $1.2 million, which is what's going to bring this figure back up. But you'll see also their other equipment dropped by about $400,000. And DPW's equipment and vehicles here went down. And 2027, another apparatus for Chatham Township Fire Department, and your standard in terms of road resurfacing, PD and DPW vehicles and equipment, nothing out of the ordinary there. The chief, you'll notice, did start to account for that projection of costs might increase on vehicles. So you'll see, for example, here in 2028, again, those numbers went up. There's no apparatus that is going to be needed, or at least planned for, in 2028. And then 2029, we do have another apparatus coming due for the Chatham Township Fire Department in the amount of 1.5. So we will see that spike coming up that year. And then 2030 starts to level back out again. And as you get further out, some of the departments are expecting that some things might hit end of life, whether they last a year or not. So PD and DPW, erring on the side of caution, did include a few things that they thought might be nearing end of life. Some unassigned projects or requests, affordable housing obligations. That's a big unknown. We've been talking, and the state's just passed legislation on affordable housing obligations for the municipalities. I can't even begin to give you an estimate right now, but if you look at the past couple of years, we have spent several $1 million, whether it's in property acquisition, whether it's in developer subsidies. I'd probably say in the last 5 years, it's been somewhere close to almost $10 million in terms of affordable housing obligations. So that is something that we have to be mindful of as we consider other big ticket items. One other item, and they kind of play off each other, the next 2 items, the police headquarters municipal office construction. I know that's something that's been talked about for quite a while. I think we need to pull the trigger on something, so estimating $5 to $7 million for that, but the alternative is municipal building maintenance. Now, in either case, and that what I'm referring to with this is, if we don't come up with a complex that houses both the police and the municipal building, and the municipal building were to remain as its intended use, there is work that needs to be done here. There's the costs of, a lot of the things here are still from the original construction of the building. Carpeting, windows, walls, wallpapers falling down, windows are not the most efficient and have issues. And even if we were not going to stay, or if we were gonna stay and have another tenant in this building, there's work that would still need to be done here as well, from whether it's entrance and exits, whether it's fire safety, whether it's partitioning off walls. There's about $1 million that we've already estimated in upgrades and repairs that need to be made to this building. One idea that's been on my mind since last year is looking at our assets for solar energy generation. The thought there is that it would reduce our operating expenses. In some cases, we have an abundance of space that would probably generate us revenue above and beyond what we're already using. You know, we've got everything. You look at the WPC, the pump stations, you look at the recycling center, the municipal building, our parking lots. So if we wanted to embark on a solar energy project for each of these, even if it's phased in, there are also federal grants for that, which would help subsidize because the federal government is pushing that. So that is something that I stuck here as sort of my request. And then the library, as Committeeman McHugh knows very well, we were just on a call today with the library, but conservative estimate is if we were to do one or even multiple phases, that's going to be an almost $3 to $4 million expense for each municipality. And depending on the timing, that could quickly go up. And just to give you an idea, what that would mean is, and in addition to what I was talking about, the debt service going up year after year, you know, in terms of our payments for the current budget, that would add an about average over 7 years, $142,000 each year in additional debt service to our operating budget.
So just so we're clear, the debt service, not the debt service, the capital plan you laid out initially, where you have it mapped out by year, that is kind of a keep the lights on capital plan.
Correct. There's really not much in here that is, sorry.
There was not a lot of wiggle room. We questioned every line. Yeah, there's not a lot of room at all.
So before we discuss it, are there any other items that anybody is wondering why they're not on the I mean, I'm wondering why parks.
So the parks would fall under open space, so on the open space fund, and we do have an allocation there every year that would, you know, between the debt service and maintenance and upgrades, so whether it's the pool, whether it's, you know, looking at returfing fields, we do have all of those. We certainly review those, but they don't have a direct impact on the operating budget and the taxes. So
Okay.
that one in WPC, I felt, you know, we review them another time, or as they come up. It's not, you know, it's not critical as part of this, I think, general fund budget.
Okay. Because I know at some point we had wanted to get kind of a mapping of when you know, each field is going to expire that we've got to anticipate replacing, and I guess, and things at Colony, those types of things. So you're comfortable that the open space fund, that will cover those expenses over time?
I am. I think as long as, sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
I know we had discussed, we have a budget set aside for the Fensky property. That was part of this year's budget, and it still left 330-some odd thousand. And when Z and I were reviewing, we put 500, and we don't think that the Fensky, the total cost will be that high, because it's the purchase price with any of the soft costs. So we probably have about 60,000 left from that. And we also have 50,000 that's still in capital for, it was Colony Pool. And so that's another like 110 on top of the 330 that is the balance. And if the project is done this year, it may not need payment until next year. It started this year, the finished product may not be done until next year, which then you have another levy for 25 that could become part of the funding process as well.
You just said 50,000, but what our understanding was 500,000.
500 is in the budget for Fensky. There's 50,000 that's already budgeted in capital. That was from prior year ordinances that has not been spent, so it's available to put towards Colony Pool.
Correct. But the wall project in Colony is 500,000, is what?
No, 300.
Was what we
It was estimated at 300, so that balance that Denver was talking about, 3-something, we have enough there, and in old funds.
Okay, the report I had said 500,000, so that's good news then, 300,000.
The estimate the original estimate from, John was, I believe, $300,000. That's what we had all along, was estimating $300,000. Now, with the straight wall, that changed. We don't know, does that go up, does it go down? In either case, we're confident we've got the funds there, again, between the old and the new, and as we said, you know, you're gonna make an initial payment now, and then by the time it finishes, because it is gonna carry into the next year, it's not gonna be done all this year, so you make the payments, you know, as they send in their bills. So we will have the 2025 levy to also supplement that.
Is there anything else that, anybody on the committee was wondering why we don't have it in the capital plan, either now or going forward?
When you put together the police and muni buildings, are you considering that to be a combined effort or individuals?
That is, what I had envisioned was a combined effort.
Okay.
I envisioned a combined effort, but it's not a decision, it's just, again, coming up with the best guess, what makes sense. I think that's what makes the most sense. But we would have to at least incorporate, or at least engage an architect or engineer to get started, and that's gonna have soft costs associated with it to get started on that. So I do think we need to make a determination, whether it's this year or early next year, to say, okay, here's what we want to do, and what does that process look like? You know, does it look like public engagement first, kind of brainstorming? Does it look like getting professionals to give us concepts first with some estimates to present to the public? You know, that all has to be discussed and decided upon.
I mean, I guess what I have to add about this is just like, what strikes me about public finance, which is that, to me, it's less important how much it is, but rather who pays. Okay, that's something that I've seen over a long period of time, where whether it be grant funds or otherwise. So I think this is a better view forward than we've had in the 3 years I've been on the committee here, so this is good. I think where this could get better is that there's a certain amount of debt authorization that we're gonna do, and there's gonna be a certain amount of debt execution. And if we had a projection for what is actually gonna be executed this year and what is just authorized because we need to do that for public purposes, there's a vast difference there. And it could be the case that we're authorizing, because of grants or other things, adjustments that we make, we're authorizing debt that we never use, which would be a great thing for the public. So I think that's one thing that could help vision forward. The other thing that I would just add about this is specifically about like turning our resources, the great assets of this town, into resources. When you talk about things like improving the municipal building, if this was a private property, we would look at this and say, well, there's gonna be, we'll make improvements, but they're gonna be tenant improvements. And so you're kind of happy to figure out creatively how to pay for that because you know there's a tenant behind it, right? So I think if we use a little bit of that thinking towards not only this property, but our other resources too. Like in other communities, they have scheduling applications that allow people to schedule time in a gym at an hourly rate, you know? And I think there are resources in this town that we could use in that manner. That would be very helpful. And the capital expense to get into it is offset, of course, by the revenue that we would then generate. So, and it would make quality of life improvements. So like, for instance, technology for field scheduling would allow us to rent the fields. I mean, I'm just walking in this building tonight, there is a probably, I'm not sure, but likely private soccer group using our Mountainside field here, and I'm not sure that we're aware of that, or that that's a strictly authorized use. The same thing happens at our other fields. You see it regularly. If you go down there, you'll see private clinic, private coaching kind of situations, where I think there's a miss for an opportunity for the community. So, and of course, the space in this building. You know, if we can use that, I don't think it doesn't look bad, or rather, it's more palatable to the public, and to me, certainly as a resident, if we knew we had revenue coming in.
Okay. I guess I would ask if we go back to this year's plan.
This one?
Yeah. So, any questions in particular, because this you need authorization. Do we have a sense, to Committeeman Lois's point, do we have a sense of how much we would actually incur in debt this year?
So,
With the trucks, I know you were talking about there's some
yeah.
portion.
So this is planning, and again, you know, to Committeeman Lowe's point and your point, you know, we're gonna have to do this by ordinance, and at that point too, we would get into much more specifics, and explain that would be in the ordinance as well. And as we've done some other ordinances, you say, here's the total authorization, here's the down payment, this amount of money is coming from this fund, this is what's coming from that fund. But based off of here, right, you know that line where I have CIF and DP, $800,000, that we know is $900,000. I just put $800,000 across the board so we have a baseline. But we appropriate $900,000 in the capital improvement fund this year. So of that $900,000, right, we would have to look at what would we really be issuing debt for. I would say the apparatus, and you know, I'll ask Debbie to weigh on her ideas of this, but definitely the two apparatus would be something that we would go out to bond for. We'd do a separate authorization on those. The road resurfacing, the PD vehicles, DPW equipment, to the extent that we can pay them out of the capital improvement fund, we would do that. But we would have to reduce that $900,000, but by whatever the down payment is that we're going to need to issue debt for. The fire department equipment, that $530,000, that includes some radios. I'm still working with the county and the departments to see if I can get that number down. See if we can get the county to lease us some radios that the fire departments need, so that way we don't have to buy them outright. You're responsible for their maintenance when they're end of life. What do we do with them? Because we are getting radios from the county right now, but limited quantities. So if we can do that, that would be a big help. And so we're still looking at that. The affordable housing, the timing of that one, we want to do the authorization, but we're going to need that sooner rather than later, because we want to make sure that, well, we don't need the financing right away. We just need to have a commitment for the financing, because the developer still has to finalize everything with HMFA. So these are the things that we would, you know, work out. They'd all be in the authorization, but you know, Debbie and I would work closely, and I'd tell Debbie, hey, listen, the affordable housing number, we don't need to finance that just yet. We can wait on that. The apparatuses, same thing. When the departments, they're pretty close on their specs, but when they're ready to, you know, start presenting what it is that they want to buy, they've buttoned everything up, and they want to start talking to us about the contract terms, and you know, we have to look at, okay, where is this coming from? Is it what contract or co-op is this coming from? What's the down payment needed? That's going to dictate when we actually are going to finance those. So right now it's still premature. I think probably in the next month or two we will have that, you know, have a better idea of those.
I mean, for example, I know the fire trucks are the big chunk, and those, I thought I recall hearing like it's going to be a couple of years before we even get it, and it's like 1/3 deposit.
Yeah, there's a build out on them. The bigger the deposit, sometimes they will drop money off the cost.
Okay.
So if you make a bigger deposit up front, you might be able to save, you know, they'll shave off 5%, 10%, whatever it is. So we don't know those details yet. We have to talk to the vendors and, you know, get a better idea of that.
Okay.
It is a minimum of like a 2-year turn though after
Yes.
COVID for these apparatus.
Yep.
I have a general kind of 40,000-foot view, and that is looking at the 7-year plan, or even the initial year, our year. It's bump and bump and bump, right? When is it that a debt load becomes impactful on ratings and all those kinds of things? Where is it where we really got to get careful, because we're looking at about a lot of things that are going to build on things that are going to build on things that may even build on other things. And so if, you know, whereas our position today versus, you know, other communities, similar communities, and the debt load that we would even consider taking on. Or we're going to pay more for interest.
I've been talking a lot, so.
You're limited to a certain percentage, like
Right.
3% of your equalized value, so there is a whole calculation. We're well under that for the standard. But the rating agencies will look at your debt ratio. We're not in any danger, but it does impact your tax rate for next
Sure.
year.
Sure.
Because obviously you're seeing $100,000 increase in over an increment. So you're looking at, you know, a 0.5% increase, you know, every year just in the debt accumulation, because nothing is dropping off in that first 7 years that you're looking at.
Okay.
Of all, I
Until
believe
the debt
of
starts
all
to
of
drop off, and if we're constantly accumulating,
Yes.
you're just building and building before that big drop is gonna
Right.
come off, and at a certain point, we're gonna have to bond it.
Right.
I was just gonna say, I believe of all the municipalities in Morris County, there's only one that doesn't have carry debt. I believe it's Dover.
And Worthington.
Oh, yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
So
They
it's
brag
not
about paying
uncommon
down
for
their,
all, you know, municipalities to carry that limit, but there's a lot of guardrails.
No, I understand, but
around
that's
it.
what I mean, but.
Yeah.
We fared a lot better than most
most.
municipalities.
No, no, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I wanna continue that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want to hear.
Debbie won't let it
Yeah, okay.
go
We
beyond the
have,
guardrails.
our history brought us back to when we were hitting COVID, and we had affordable housing, we
Yes.
had our own little pandemic with the two of them colliding, and we had a really tough budget year, two on top of each other, that we had a lot of professional costs, everything associated with the affordable housing.
Yes.
So that increased taxes. So we increased those taxes. So you had that big increase. That carries forward to our current years. So after that, once those leveled out, now back to a normal level, we now have that equity in our tax rate to be utilized for our capital improvements. So that tax increase then is carrying forward now. Because
Yes.
before, we never had this allotment of money to put towards capital improvement. Now we do. But it was back to that tax rate increase that is now carried forward and is helping us dissolve some of that capital, not to have to go out to debt. So those small increases will accommodate that in the future especially. Because right now we're paying 1.5 million in debt service every year.
Right,
If that was alleviated, that could be going towards capital improvement.
of course.
So you're gonna be paying it out at one point or another. In the long term, when you look at the cost associated with a project over time, you're
Will double.
sometimes doubling the cost of
Yes.
the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you push something out 20, 30 years.
Yes.
What costs $2 million is now $4 million.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, so the priority is 2024's capital plan, and like we had talked about, that's the keep the lights on plan, and,
Public safety is the big thing in the
public
2024,
safety,
yeah. It's a
yeah,
big
and
theme
we're not
for
gonna
public
incur
safety.
all of it, that's kind of like the high end of what
We're gonna
the authorization you're seeking.
You authorize, and then we'll go out for a note for what's needed at the time. We'll have an evaluation of what payments need to be made over the course of that, say, a year. We are gonna go out for a note in September, because we have our current note, which needs to be rolled in September. So we'll do everything that we need at once to kind of defer some costs and not have to get two notes.
Okay,
Because they do it, roll it into one, we're gonna save some money.
great. So, I guess what I wanted from the committee, twofold. Thank you for the presentation, this was great, because we haven't had it organized in this manner in the past. And it was something that bugged me for a long time, so I appreciate you getting this done.
Thanks for your patience.
So there's two things. There's giving you the authorization to move forward with the 2024. The other piece, the things that we'd like to have that are unassigned at this point, that I'd like to carry forward just because I want to continue the discussion. So if there's other things that come to mind, or if we start talking about priorities, when we talk about what's happening with this building, if we move the staff over to a new police station type thing, then we could start thinking about better utilization of this space. So there's a lot of conversation that's take place. So I guess I would say, especially because it's been a long night so far, any objection to what's proposed for 2024 capital plan?
Well, I mean, my only input there is that we had no discussion at all, really, of any substance about our priorities lists. And I spent a lot of time preparing that, and, we were supposed to have an hour discussion on it, and we, you know, that night ran long as well, we didn't have any discussion on it. So I'm wondering even how the, you know, how, I mean, what was the point of that exercise, or how did that feed into this capital plan?
So 2 points on that is I still have to schedule a meeting with the administration committee, because I think that's where we were referring it, but wanted to go over this capital plan first. You know, a lot of those things that I did look at the, you know, what are things in there for this budget that needed to be included, and you know, I think we incorporated it, and if I missed something for 2024 at least, but because the other ones are future planning, there's no commitment to any of those just yet. So we can still adjust, and we will adjust. This is just a presentation of right now what the departments and everybody's requested. And I tried to include, I think affordable housing was one of them. We talked about libraries being one of them. So tried to incorporate as much of that as possible. But if I missed something for 2024, let me know.
Not for 2024. The only other kind of wish list item that I recall seeing was the sidewalk on Fairmount. That was the only one I could think of from the priorities list.
Well, the priorities list, I mean, went, I guess, beyond what the scope of this capital is, because this capital presentation is sort of subscribing to this idea of segregated funds, which I like, which is that, you know, we have open space funds, and we haven't really talked about that, right? So this kind of, it seems to me like recreation is sort of lumped off of this, right? We're kind of leaving it in the open space fund. I mean, that's what it seems like to me in terms of capital.
I think so, because a lot of the investment that's going into the, it's either gonna be open space or come out of our Parks and Rec Trust Fund. Parks and Rec Trust Fund, we've also been talking about that with the Finance Committee, of establishing guidelines on what's gonna be spent out of the trust fund and what's coming out of open space. But nearly all of our rec facilities are on our open space inventory, so they should be allocated to the open space fund if they are acceptable uses.
Right, and then the WPC stuff, which,
And John's
again,
working on that
separate.
report, you know, because, so again, we've got a lot of moving pieces, that's why I said this has been something I've been trying to get going since 2023. Every year we've been making incremental progress to perfecting this process, because there's a lot of things that are needed to inform this process that have not been completed and done. So we're getting there, that's why I said thank you for your patience, because, you know, this is still not the 100%, this is probably the 60 to 75%, and once we get more of those, the review of the WPC and our capacity and what's needed over there, and once we get a more thorough assessment of all of our parks and fields, we'll be able to, you know, look at, okay, this is end of life, you know, the lights hit end of life on this year. So we're getting there.
sure. So I guess the only, like, near-term thing I have that maybe it would be, 'cause it would seem to me Parks and Rec Trust Fund is actually part of the budget. Like, so the main operating budget, that's what it would seem to me would fall in there.
There's a separate trust for recreation.
Okay, so that's separate, and that's the fees that are collected from the
Yes.
kids, right? So then there's a lot of segregation, okay. Yeah, I mean, I would have to compare this against that priorities list to see if there's something missing.
But I think we can move forward with the 2024 and still, I mean, the other reason I wanted to start having this discussion is because I'd like the public to get involved too. So, you know, we still have an opportunity to develop the rest of the, you know, list. This is the, you know, right now we're looking for the 2024 Keep the Lights On capital plan. Is there any objection to proceeding with that? So that's really what I'm looking for. We could always add.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about capital, right? You could always say, there could always be an ad at some point in.
We just want to get the ball rolling so
Yeah.
that John can once we get the ordinance done, then you still have an estoppel period of 20 days, so we need to get the ball rolling so John can get the paving started, and, because I can't award any contracts until after that 20 days,
Okay.
after adoption and
The
advertisement.
two big things for timeliness is right now the road resurfacing and the affordable housing, so that way those aren't held up. I mean, yes, PD and DPW stuff is important, so is the others, the two apparatus, so that's coming a little bit down the line. But yeah, we do need to get drafting on the ordinance and slate it for the next meeting.
Okay.
And the thing, I'm sorry, Mayor, but just the thing about cars this year, I mean, the car market's rolling hard, right? So we were facing the opposite, which is we couldn't get cars, and if you didn't buy them, then you were definitely paying more, and now it's the other way. So that might not be a bad thing to kick until the fall, if without of course, impacting public safety.
Okay, great, I think you have your marching orders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I gotta recognize Debbie, not enough, she does such a great job and puts in a lot of time, so thank you, Debbie.
Do we need a 5-minute bodily function break? Bio break. Let's just take a 5-minute break. Where are we, 9:34? We'll come back at 9:40.
Recording stopped.
Pretending to look at your phone. Oh my gosh. So much. A lot.
See, question for you. Do you want me to, or need me to review the manual or just do that?
No, if
It
you,
sounds like you guys did it.
it can't hurt to review it, but I
Okay.
think we're confident.
Good,
I think we're
okay.
confident, there's not too much,
Yeah.
I see your email. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
So,
I'll let Jonathan deal with it, see
well,
what
I
he
did
says.
fine.
I know,
sent
he's
it
done
over,
that.
and nobody said anything.
I was in class all day, I'm leaving it to him. Well, he could say, he's responding to
Should I
comments later,
put
so.
decline the meeting that Peter sent out?
I just, it's on your calendar, that's it, just so it's up there, like,
Yeah.
it needs to change, I'll change it. You don't have to accept it, I'll just go out. We'll wait till we hear back.
Just wanna let you know.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
What?
Have a good night, thank you, Debbie. See you Thursday.
Is it,
You know my number if you
are
need
you
it.
done with this?
Yes, yeah, thank you, thanks, Frank. I mean, it is a lot, but it's not too.
We'll go through it Thursday.
Yep, 1, 2.
Yeah, we definitely need a list.
I mean, these things should be pretty quick, the things are gonna take a while, I think, it's probably gonna be that, hopefully not, but. I have 2 things on here that can take some time, I really want to, I mean, it's a lot, I should break it.
What are the things that are gonna take a lot of time?
I would say this one right here.
Hold on, let me get my glasses on, which one? Oh,
And
oh jeez.
I think, this one right here,
Yeah.
and I think this one right here,
Alright.
if I had to guess.
You're good.
If I'm a betting man, did you write them down? You
No.
wrote my words?
I know. I know what you said, or you pointed out.
Let's see. So, midnight.
Hey, my baby's in bed. I'm good now.
Did you have a chance to look over that agreement?
No, I sent it to, people in charge of my firm. And he actually, hold on, let's see what he said to me.
Okay.
He did respond to me, hold on. I'll tell you what he said in 2 seconds.
Yes.
What I can't tell is, he sent me back an agreement, so I don't understand what he's trying to say, it with no, like, commentary, so. I can't tell if this is your agreement that you sent him, or is he proposing a different one? I'll have to compare them
Okay.
and let you know, cause he didn't really give.
Yeah, because what I sent you today was, Z had put that together based on some prior agreements, then I, put in, like, I've versions, like, rather than have, every vendor having a different contract,
Yeah.
I made a template to use for everyone, then I
Okay.
decided, put in, like, the firm name, the contact name,
Yeah,
resolution number, stuff like that.
yeah, it looked fine to me, but it's not really, that kind of goes above my head a little bit, so, it needs to be reviewed by,
Okay.
the executive committee.
Okay, because like in addition to them, that being the basic contract for McMahon and Scotland, like, pretty much the same language for engineering,
Yeah,
you know, like,
Okay, all right, so I'll talk to him.
Okay.
He responded with a contract, and on my phone, I can't tell if he like is proposing revisions, if it's a different contract he's giving me, or.
Yeah, 'cause, the only change that I really, other than tailoring to the particular vendor, the only other change I made for this year was, Z's template has, the not to exceed language, where,
Yeah.
because we didn't do that in our
Okay.
resolutions this year.
We got a minute.
Yeah, I took that out, but we would put
Right.
that in, back in for next year.
Okay.
Are you, Tina, are you familiar with the changes to the open legislation or not? Because otherwise I'll just ask you to speak to that one thing that he brought up about the change in the, who pays the legal fees.
Yes, I can speak to that.
Okay.
Now, is he talking about recent changes? I'm not familiar with any.
It can't, yeah, it's, yeah.
No, I don't have that.
Okay, if they just dropped it yesterday, then okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just came out pretty recently.
Oh, what the changes are on
I don't know,
Oprah?
but I'll
Yeah.
just ask her to speak to that.
Yep.
in case they don't know.
Do we even know what they are?
I don't yet, I can look into it.
I saw
Why
this-
don't we defer to, I'll make sure and do it for,
Oh, they're supposed to vote on it soon.
maybe,
The
for,
12th.
So,
Thursday.
yeah, if you could, maybe email us highlights.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, is that, Alex, are you good to resume?
Recording in progress.
Are we good on YouTube?
Okay, we're back.
We should be, because as long as she didn't pause it, so it's good.
Okay.
I mean, I posted it on my
Thank you.
end, but, you know.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the May 7th Township Committee meeting. We are going to continue. Why don't we move on to administration?
Okay. First one, a resolution to authorize a purchase agreement with the county. Good news there, I have been negotiating with the county to get a vehicle and a ride-on mower. So the vehicle would be used by our construction department, our inspectors and all that, and the ride-on mower would be used by DPW, and both for the price of $1. So surplus equipment from them over there reduces, again, our need to buy stuff.
Like that price.
Yep, good price. Any questions there? All right, thank you. Resolution cost of living adjustment, that's the annual increase for employees, the non-union employees. So this was based on what was budgeted and in line with what was last year, about 3%, which is less than what the unions are getting, but then also less than the cost of inflation. But it recognizes the non-union employees for their continued hard work and slating that for the next meeting.
Okay.
Next one is an ordinance on the use of native vegetation that our wonderful environmental commission has put together in consultation with DPW, and I have been reviewing it, and I fully support it and endorse it. I think it's something that we can do, and it only applies to municipal properties, and there are some exemptions in there for, you know, unforeseen or exigent circumstances which they accommodated. So, any questions on that?
Anybody have questions, or environmental committee chair hung in there all this time? Any questions for her?
Someone asked for something. She's
Actually, I do have a question. I know that other towns have created such an ordinance, correct? And has there been any feedback from any of those towns on its acceptance, applicability? Is it 100%? Is everybody happy, not happy? Do we have any kind of feedback like that?
So I haven't consulted with the other towns to see what the feedback is. Different towns do different things. Not all towns do 100% native. Some do, 70%. I have mixed feelings on that. I am by no means opposed to doing 70% native, 30% non-native, but I feel like it's harder then to follow, for DPW to follow, for the garden club to follow, because how do you how do you break that up? It's not that easy. But there are exceptions in there. Zee and I talked about, availability or cost prohibitive or stuff like that. But I don't think, we have this native plant sale every year. We've been having it for years. Every year we sell more and more native plants. I think there's a public appetite for this and acceptance for this. I don't think there will be any issues. We put in a native plant garden
And there is some, kind of cost exception built in, right? That if there's some, I can't recall.
Yeah, we did, I can pull up that, don't know if it's close, but yeah, they did incorporate that. And I just add also, it's an education component. I mean, people think, you know, because we're saying native plants, like it's some big hurdle, but it really isn't. I mean, they're available in so many places. It's just a matter of like not picking your sort of garden variety of what's available at Home Depot. It's just making a very conscious decision to say, okay, well, instead of this grass, I'm gonna go with this grass, or this shrub. You have a lot of options. People just don't know about it. So since this is for municipal property, you know, what is the real reality of how many projects are we doing, really, that this is impacting anyways. But when we do, it keeps us on our toes and makes sure that we're doing right by New Jersey.
And there are exceptions in there for memorials and flagpole areas. And the Environmental Commission put in for grants to buy signage where we do have native plants to say this is, you know, echinacea, this is why it's here. So that's the education component.
Wonderful, any questions?
My only comment on this is just that this is something where we're saying what can be planted on municipal property, but we still have the issue of the tree ordinance that applies to what people have to do, right, to replace trees on their property to get to a certain density, but we don't follow that in the municipality. So I think we kind of have an imbalance of, we're going to a native vegetation ordinance, okay, which I have no issue with it, and I think the way that this is crafted is pretty smart in the way that it's going to be implemented. It's good. But we're still not even meeting the requirements we're putting on every other property owner in town when we do municipal projects. And I would like to see something with as many carve-outs and caveats and exceptions as this native vegetation ordinance has for a tree ordinance that would sort of give direction and policy for what we're gonna do to replace trees. Because we've seen trees get taken down, and they're pretty important shade trees, shading playgrounds, shading important areas, and not replaced.
So we have another grant application and the project in the works for Shunpike to do reforestation there. And we've consulted with Morris County and a couple foresters. And so we put in our grant, Z reviewed it, and he signed a letter of support to it, and it would be doing this. I think there's a matter of finding the appropriate place to put trees. I'm sure you know Colony, they just took down a huge oak that was dead. So I have sent a letter saying, you know, we want another oak planted in that area to make up for the tree that was taken down. So I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Is there, so, I'm trying to think of what the expectation is, to what Committeeman Lois was saying, that, you know, there are certain cases if a tree is dead, if a tree is diseased, that you take down the tree. So likewise, we would expect in our DPW that they're evaluating the trees, and otherwise it would be an effort to replace if there's some things that have to be taken down. So when the path is cleared between over by Shunpike to the overflow lots, if a tree came down that, you know, normally a resident would have to replace, then we would look to replace that. I mean, I don't think there's unreasonable.
No, I think it's very reasonable. I think the issue has been in just the sort of planning in terms of putting money aside for tree planting. You know, in other places where we'd have a tree bank, you know, if certain people couldn't meet the requirements, they're contributing to that tree bank. That tree bank is where we always tapped into for money to put trees on the planting strip, or, you know, so we can do that in our open space fund as well. You know, we just have to make a conscious effort to budget for that, and we will.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's really an issue of budget, but with the tree ordinance, that I think the tricky part would be density, right? So right now, we have a required density on certain properties, and then there's quadrants, and it's kind of become, probably, maybe, in my view, it's too involved. But we would have to craft something that would say, okay, that would take into some sort of density, or some sort of, you know, objective way of looking at what really needs to be replaced. Because obviously, you're a homeowner, you could take down, let's say, 4 trees, and you're still at the density. You don't need to replace any of them, right? Because your property is overgrown with trees. Maybe you have too many, you know, something. You have to meet a certain density. So we have to have the same ability. And if you're looking at a huge field like Nash or Shunpike or Mountain View, and, you know, it's like, oh, how many trees did I take down? Well, there's still a lot more trees, right? So it's gonna have to be something that has a wide berth to it. It's gonna have to be something that shows sentiment and intent and not necessarily, probably a hard calculation. But I think it's much like this ordinance for use of native vegetation. It's very, open and reasonable. So, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so administration,
We had two more resolutions there.
yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's why I was looking where we are, shared service
Yep.
agreement with the health department.
Just a note, I mean, there's not much there. We've discussed this in executive session, so just putting it on your radar that next meeting, we likely will have the resolution. The Board of Health did, Greg was there, he can speak to that if needed, but they adopted their concurrence or recommendation that we proceed, and Tina's been working with the provider agency to get that buttoned up, so we'll just need a resolution to authorize the agreement.
Great.
And then the new developers agreement amendment, which Tina also spoke about, I believe, executive, which is the amendment to incorporate the increase in our contribution and clarifying responsibilities. So both of those on the next agenda. Any questions about either? Okay. Discussion action item, there was a request to talk about the issue of landscaper noise. Just kind of putting it out there, not sure where we want to go with that, there's different approaches, but
Yeah, this actually came up a couple times, and certainly have experienced it myself as well as a lot of our neighbors. And the degree to which coming up with maybe alternates for a limitation on either the decibel levels, which has been, people walk out with their Apple Watch and they say, hey, you're at 90 decibels and the ordinance says 60, and yet it goes on and on and on, and I know it's been a recurring theme for many years. Is there something or creative ideas perhaps we can come up with of some kind of limitation on this noise, particularly the blowers, but obviously the other landscape noise. The blowers tend to be the big ones. People have talked to me, well, maybe everybody go electric, and then we're going to have landscape contractors who have to charge batteries every half an hour, and they're certainly going to drive costs up, and a lot of positives but negatives to that as well. So the reason I asked for this to be put on here is to have more of a discussion. Are other towns doing some things effectively? Are they quadranting towns for certain days where the noise can be made? And what's the appetite for, within the community, and what do the residents think? We'd really like to reach out and say, hey, what do we all think about this, and is it a quality of life issue that should have more conversation, where maybe we as a committee can give some guidance or make some suggestions on how to alleviate that. So that's really why I asked for it to be put on the agenda. I don't have the creative solution. I wish I did. And so I'm asking for people smarter than me to come and make some suggestions that we can consider. So I reach out to the town and others to do that.
So this comes up before the Board of Health periodically, since the noise ordinance is a Board of Health governing document.
Yes.
And part of the problem that the Health Department is often cited with enforcement is that in the time, from if they get a call that a landscaper is making too much noise, by the time they could get out there with the sound equipment, the landscaper has already moved on to another town. And there's the issue of having to have base readings when it's quiet versus base readings when the landscapers are there. So the Board of Health is aware of the issue, but there are inherent enforcement problems with it. And when the Board of Health discussed leaf blowers in particular, we had a local landscaper come on the meeting on the Zoom call, and something that he noted was that towns where they have banned leaf blowers, landscapers don't do business there anymore. So Yeah, that's a consideration.
No, certainly there's practical implication, but there's also, maybe some kind of middle ground and what suggestions were even made by the health department, if any. And so, because, and I did get that response actually pretty directly and pretty aggressively. Yeah, I can just say, take my Apple Watch and do it. Is there, could I just email what's on my Apple Watch? And that would be kind of a reporting structure or something. I mean, these are details, but I don't think I'd like to just kind of drop it because it's so impractical. I would like to see if we might be able to discuss some kind of format.
Well, I think one suggestion I think we briefly spoke about, maybe putting out a survey just to see, what are people's sentiments. Because I know we just had spring cleanup, so there's going to be definitely going to be more people in your yard for a concentrated period of time. And then as the season goes on, it's, your regular 1 or 2 people. So we just came out of the season where it's spring cleanup, so there's definitely going to be a lot more activity and noise. And I think we could maybe put out a survey to everyone and just see how they feel about it, because even in the Board of Health, we had a discussion about it, and people seemed more concerned about the trucks parking and where they park, and that causes, a safety issue versus the noise issue. So I think maybe putting like a quick down and dirty 10 to 20 questions. Are you concerned on a scale of 1 to 5 of this? How do you feel about this? Like the parking, the noise, the spring cleanup, the use of chemicals, those kind of things. We had a lot of conversation around treatments and ticks and those kind of things. So I think it's noise, but there's a whole gamut of things related to landscaping services in our community that maybe we could just take the pulse on, because it's a lot to cover, and maybe baby steps, we start with the priorities.
And I don't know, when it comes to noise, if you're gonna be a little more broad and talk about, whether it be you doing it in your own yard or whether you have a landscaper. I mean, I have a neighbor that seems to just be using a leaf blower like constant, and he has landscapers. It's just constant. So I mean, I think that,
right, not even the level, but the frequency.
I mean, whatever, noise is noise, whether, no matter who's making it.
So, because I was going to raise that point, that I remember when I was on the Board of Health, the big problem was that you couldn't just say landscapers, whatever you.
Right.
So if you banned gas boilers, then you were banning residents from using gas boilers. If you said you can't blow your lawn on Saturday or Sunday, or let's say just Sunday, then the residents can't do that either. So then it's how do you come up with a response that, because residents don't want to be told they can't take care of their property.
No more than 1 gas blower per property. There's different ways. Some landscapers come in and they're doing 3 or 4. They just want to be done. So you have like a whole fleet and they're just banging out a whole street. So you can say something like no more than 1 per property, or you could put restrictions on how many cc's of an engine. I mean, I'm not saying I'm suggesting you do these, but there's different ways you can kind of pick these apart. You can say, okay, you're only doing it between, you're doing the noise, you're only allowed to make this noise, on these days of the week. So there's.
And there is different machinery, because I know our own landscapers. It's one thing with the guys with the backpack and the blowing thing. It's another thing, they've got some big machine that they do with spring and fall cleaning that is awfully, unbearably loud. It's huge. They ride on. It's unbearably loud. So there's definitely different machines.
Carve it out, and yes, it will apply to landscapers more than it will. So you're not saying we're targeting landscapers, but you're affecting the equipment that's most likely used by non-homeowners.
But with a reasonable basis, because you're, the
the
things
volume
that,
is louder,
it's louder. Those machines just happen to be louder, and they're probably things that, homeowners aren't gonna buy for themselves.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to think of what next steps would be, because it would be nice to have some kind of input on what other towns are doing.
Yeah.
And
So
what
I
our
was,
options are.
last year I was working on a survey, sort of general, it was 10 to 15 questions on general quality of life and assessment from residents on things. Did not get a chance to finalize it, but certainly can include almost like a page 2 of other issues. I don't know, maybe the Environmental Commission, the Open Space Commission, all these different groups, if they want to submit 3 questions, and we can have this like secondary page that gives them some feedback on things. So to the point of engaging these community groups, ask each of these groups to throw in 3 questions and, you know, add to the survey. And what my thought was, and I've done this elsewhere, is it would be a postcard with a QR code and a website link. Gets mailed to every home. It's cheap. We did a postcard. I think it ends up being less than $2,000 printing and postage. They click, they sign up, and you know, tie that into the fact that, you know, we've updated our website and we're going to have a mailing list system now finally, so we can tie that all in together.
May I make a suggestion about this? I think that some of these quality of life issues, the problem with them is that you can have feedback skewed by a small number of people that are highly interested. And I don't want to see that happen for our community. I also don't want to go to the expense of doing something we have never done. I think it's incumbent on the 5 of us that, you know, we've door knocked, you talk to residents to bring issues back. But as far as doing a survey, could we keep the survey perhaps online only and say, what are the most important questions? And then raise all these questions, landscaping, noise, whatever the questions are, and then put them forth for a ballot, a non-binding ballot referendum question that we have put on for the fall, so that we get true feedback from a large group of people, so that everybody's presented the question. And the question would just be a non-binding, and we could get back feedback from the whole community then, as opposed to getting feedback from, you know, hey, I'm really interested in this, I got 30 friends, and I'm gonna pump it to them, and they're gonna feedback our electronic poll. So this way it goes on the ballot. But what we could get would be a sense of what are the most important questions, and then let the public weigh in on that.
Yeah, I would say let's first get the input, and then we can decide, you know, how we want to proceed with that.
That would have to be like very early summer though, because we need to get it on the ballot, we'd have to, you know, obviously, it gets printed.
Okay.
I like that idea, Z.
The quality of life survey, were you
Yeah.
planning on having that done soon though?
I had the
We're
question.
talking about this November's ballot.
Well, I mean, I had that question, the survey drafted, and the postcards was just, you know, a matter of timing. Last year didn't get it. I didn't want to do it before everybody went away on vacation, and the postcards are sitting there. The way it was done also is they're putting in their, you know, an address, so you're validating. You're not getting more than one based off of an address. You know, and it's essentially non-binding. So it's just to give you a feel. It's
Yeah, okay. Well, the reality is we don't have to answer it this year necessarily, but if we start the process, and at least I like the idea of a quality of life, you know, survey, so residents can give input on their priorities. Okay. So that was landscaper noise, and then colony pool membership and revenue report.
yeah, I apologize. That was sent out a little late. I was working on the capital presentation, was a big priority, but that report did get emailed out this afternoon, and I can pull it up. It's a very simple report, though. Just identifies, you know, revenue and overall revenue last year, this year, and then the membership registration based off of early bird and regular season for both.
Oh, you had a nice early bird, I'm just looking at this now, turnout.
This is April to April though, 23, 24.
It's
so
from,
down.
it's through April
Right.
30th, yeah,
Right.
so, you know, we ran the report essentially it's the beginning of January, but registration doesn't open until, this year we opened it a little bit earlier in February, but not too much, but yeah.
Oh, I was reading wrong, so it is down, that's not
Yeah,
down.
it's down.
Not, it's down, the
No,
early
the
bird is
regulars,
down
the regulars
2,000.
are up, and the early birds are down, but, you know,
Not much.
too much.
Okay.
We do have another mailing that's going out also, and I think that'll scoop up some more numbers as well, and yeah.
So it looks like it's gonna be similar or down a touch.
Okay. Great. Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think if we have another mailing coming up, that you gotta check that the QR code actually bounces to the right link, because right now it's busted, it's broken.
It was all part of the migration of the website. It's all working as of today.
Okay, I had a report today that it wasn't. The links on Facebook, you know, for like swim lessons, broken. When we sent out the initial postcard, went to there was no QR code, it was a website. The initial postcard, right, that announced early bird, resolved to a website we don't own. So the only contact information on the first early bird postcard has a website that, you know, doesn't resolve to the Colony page and doesn't resolve to any page. It's just not something that, colonypool.org, which I guess expired, and we don't have it. So I think there's a bunch of promotional issues with, you know, I think that's, you know, linked to this. It's just another example though where revenue, we want revenue to go higher, but rates going higher doesn't mean revenue goes higher. You're seeing it again here. Okay? I've said it a lot, so I'm not going to. I have a question about the snack bar vendor. Do we need a resolution to accept them again?
I don't believe so. I mean, they've come in, I think last year we did the concession agreement, it was multi-year with renewal options, but I will confirm, but they're ready to go.
Okay, if you could, because I think it's open space and it's 2 years. And I think there's some Green Acres issue, right, with like a concession, there's a specific AC code on that. It's like, it says like every 2 years.
Last year was the first year in the new concession.
That would be great if that's the case.
Yes, I remember Mr. King looked into it, and we did a new, because the concession expired prior to last year's season, so it was a new agreement.
Oh, wait, I think we had a new agreement, but.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, I think we do this offline, but it's just, there's something there.
Okay. And then I did want to go back to, Mr. Carr had asked about Oprah, which is coming up. It turns out that deadlines are tighter than we realized. It just came up again. It was dropped yesterday for committee discussion on the 9th, and I think looking for a committee vote on the 12th. So I know given it was just dropped, you wouldn't be in a position to speak to some of the detail, but he did bring up the topic of the shifting of the legal fees, which will be the same as before.
Yes, that's correct. That was in the, I guess, I don't really wanna call it the original, revision, but yes. And that was, a shift from the, current policy, which is if, there is a determination that the records should have been provided, there's no question, then the municipality has to pay the attorney's fees, and to a, determining, by the court of the Government Records Council, whether to award attorney's fees, and it's based on whether the public agency is found to have knowingly and willfully violated Oprah, as opposed to just a violation, whether it was unintentional or despite their best efforts. Now, no matter what you pay the attorney's fees, there's now this component of whether or not the public agency's failure to comply was knowing and willful. And if they're knowing, if they
Then
find,
they're required still to pay for the legal fees?
then the municipality could be found to be liable for legal fees. But again, you have to knowingly and knowingly and willfully violating it. So you're intentionally violating. You're intentionally not providing the fees. So to be honest, in that case, it's reasonable that you'd have to pay attorney's fees, as opposed to, you know, you've done your best efforts, you've tried to provide all the records, and you missed 3 by accident, and you know those should have been provided, and or there was a legal argument to not provide it, but the GRC just disagrees. So I think those cases, it's reasonable that the municipality shouldn't have to pay legal fees.
So, just so I'm clear, so the requirement though to pay legal fees, because I guess what I had heard was it shifted from the municipality if they were found, or if they didn't provide the documents that they would have to pay the legal fees, to shifting to that the judge decides whether or not.
Right.
Yeah, right now it's automatic that if we deny a request and we lose in court, then we have to pay their legal fees.
Yes.
This would make it the judge's discretion whether or not the person would be awarded legal fees. And as Jan explained, you know, if it's something where we deny in good faith, if it's just a difference in legal opinion, the judge might say that we don't have to pay the legal fees, whereas in the rare case that I have to deny something, if it's, I'm Tuesday and I'm annoyed and I don't like the person's shoes, then I would deserve to get in trouble and, have them get their legal fees.
But again, and another switch is, it wouldn't be Greg that would be liable for the attorney's fees, it's the municipality,
Which I would still get, a reprimand and something like that.
perhaps, yes.
So, sorry, I'm still unclear. So if we're found to have knowingly and willfully avoided Oprah, then we automatically, or it's still in the judge's discretion?
Right.
I think it's up to the judge.
It's
The
up to the
judge is
judge.
going to evaluate, and I think the standard is, if he or she finds that it was knowing and willful, then you would be paying the fees.
Okay,
But it's all gonna be in the judge's discretion.
still in the judge's discretion. Okay, and then I had just asked if you can provide us,
Yes.
kind
Will
of-
do.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Well, for the benefit of the public, you'll be providing us some of the highlights of
Yeah, the
if there's
existing.
changes, because I think we
Mhm.
had some good information from before.
Yep,
Okay.
will do.
Okay. Mr. LeConte, you're up.
Does anyone have questions on my monthly report? Okay, in that case, I sent a memo and 2 draft ordinances for, one regarding pool license fees and another regarding fees for solicitor permits and peddler licenses. In both cases recommending that those fees be raised. I'm not wedded to the suggestions, like the final dollar amounts, if the committee has any preferred amounts that they would want to potentially raise them to or leave them alone. I mainly wanted to bring this to your attention as a way to increase some revenue without having to raise taxes.
I mean, I know when I reviewed them, the peddler and solicitor fees, we were way lower than anywhere.
Okay, the solicitor permits in particular were way low, which, those are issued through the police department. Peddler licenses are issued through me, and pool licenses are issued through me. And as far as defending raising them, pool licenses in particular, those have a health department inspection, so that additional revenue would help offset the cost of our annual contract costs for health department services. For solicitor permits, as I mentioned, those are issued through the police department, and it never fails that when the police wind up issuing a solicitor permit and someone's out in a neighborhood, the police still get calls that someone's knocking on doors and they still have to go out, so, those extra fees would help offset the cost of police services. And, with peddler licenses, most of our peddlers that we issue licenses for are, ice cream vendors, which still have, health department inspections, so, again, that would help offset the cost of health department services.
Okay, so, does anybody have any comments or questions?
My only comment is that, is really a question, is, I imagine pool license fees applies to the condominium associations, the country club.
Yeah, it would be, Fairmount Country Club, Noe Pond Club, Rose Valley, the condos off of River Road, and, the Chatham Hill Apartments.
And the only one that seems to me would be a little bit on the smaller side where because it's a flat fee, right? And if you've got, whatever it is, 340 units in Brandywine, that's completely different than Roseville, right? It's much smaller, so I'm just wondering if number of doors makes any, if we're adversely impacting any community that has, let's say, less than 50 doors, you know what I mean? I don't know, or like Melrose, they don't have a pool.
Melrose doesn't have a pool.
I just don't want to impact a small community. I think 50 would be fine actually, but like 16, 18, we don't have something like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think, I thought our pool license fees were kind of comparable to other towns, right?
Well, because ours is currently 150, the boroughs is 175. I recommended raising it to 200 because
I thought we were going from 100 to 200.
it's 150 presently.
150.
But
I
yeah,
wasn't necessarily keen on that one. First of all, it's only 5 or 6. Maybe it was 9 total. There weren't really many.
there's Colony pools, our own pools, so even though I licensed that, we don't charge ourselves a fee.
Yeah.
But it's
It's 7.
Hmm?
7?
yeah, I think 7.
Yeah.
7? Okay. Yeah, I wasn't so keen on the pool license fees. A peddler and, although I didn't differentiate peddler and solicitor fees, but it looked like we were way lower than everybody else, so I'm fine with increasing those.
But if we are going to outsource and there is a pool inspection involved, it does make some sense, you know,
And
to
plus-
go up. And if the only thing is we're talking about $350.
That's what I'm saying. And we're
I thought it was
already-
100 to 200. I thought at least we're talking about $700. It's like, okay, well.
Yeah.
You know, as I mentioned in my memo, the pool license fee that we currently charge, that was set in 1972. And there's been
Yeah.
just a little bit of inflation since then, so,
And so
yeah.
we're saying we have to outsource that, and it's, how much is it costing us then? I guess that's the question.
Well, it's the whole health department.
No.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it's hard
our
to
health
afford.
department contracts have gone up significantly since 1972.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I thought it might be reasonable. Now, the Board of Health recently raised the fees for retail food inspections, because those were last set back in the late 90s. So it seems reasonable to me that, considering inflation, that we, if we don't want to raise taxes, we can raise user fees.
I'll chime in on one aspect. I think, Greg's point is well made. The purpose of these fees, whether it be application fees, permit fees, is to cover costs. And you wanna do that in such a way as to keep up with inflation and also not have to do enormous jumps in increases. So, although we haven't maybe in the past periodic review of those fees and, you know, keeping them consistent with market is a good idea, so that you don't have sticker shock for people who do have to get those fees, the permits and licenses and such. And it is intended to cover the cost, that's really the intent of it, is to cover the costs of whatever department has to review and approve and inspect and process. And while this is admittedly a small fee, it's all of those combined, right? It's all the different things that the Board of Health has to review, and it's all those different fees and license and permit fees that contribute to covering the cost of the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And, you know, in addition to the costs that I already mentioned, there's also, the cost of my time issuing the license, processing applications, the police's time processing applications, so it's.
Taking it away from Oprah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so any objections to the fee recommendations for peddler license and solicitor permit fees? No objections. Any objections to the increase in pool license fees? I don't love it, but if there's no objections, I will.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would say is like, if we're talking about $350, I mean, does it even cost, is it even cost effective to pass an ordinance and, you know, like, it's just not, it's just, you know.
All right.
I think we could go to 250, honestly. I mean, if 150 to 2, if we're at 150, the material I read, I really thought it was 100 to 200. I thought, well, that's doubling. At least that's my input on it. I don't mind though, and I don't think we're getting younger or better by talking about it more.
And if you want to raise it more, if you want to raise it, only a little bit more, again, that's the committee's discretion. I just wanted to at least have a starting point for discussion.
Because we established there's not one community, there's not one of these places that we're impacting where it's like, hey, it's 16 units, right? It's like $2 per condo, or you know, it's just not.
Okay, so I'm back to no objections. It sounds like there's no objections to the pool license fee increase to 200. Okay. You're good to go on that, right? There were no questions for your report, right? Yeah, because you started out there. Construction building. Any questions on the construction or building report that we received? Okay, engineering, we covered everything there. Finance, we covered. Police, any questions on the police report? Public Works, we have a sludge ordinance. Is this the annual sludge?
No, this is an easy
okay.
one, 2-68, Greg, Clerk of the Year. So he pulled it up already before he could even say it. It's another ordinance that's on the books that is very outdated, and we're just trying to clean it up. So it's a repeal of this ordinance. It's not relevant to us anymore.
Wonderful. Any questions on the tax collector ordinance, on the tax collector report? Okay, tax assessor, we have another resolution that's planned.
That's and we've talked about that one in exec previously.
Okay.
So just putting it on here bookmark for the next meeting, unless there's any questions on it again. But if you got direction on how to proceed.
Wonderful. So I will open our second hearing of citizens.
Gotta wake them up.
We do have one hand raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Carr?
Good evening once again, Stuart Carr from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township, New Jersey. Comment on the Oprah item per the attorney's comment a minute ago. Again, sorry to be direct, I apologize. But things like this issue on the fee shifting, what they could be doing and what we should be recommending is that the losing party will pay, like the municipality, okay? But if the request is found to be correct, but actually a fishing expedition or frivolous, et cetera, then in that exceptional circumstance, the attorneys for the plaintiff victory party would not be getting their revenue, would not be getting their fees. So the idea is, again, it would be the plaintiff wins unless they do something that's frivolous, as opposed to the judge has pure discretion, and the only way the plaintiff gets paid, plaintiff attorney, is if we see this egregious malfeasance on the part of the municipality. Because again, there is a cost. I don't mind paying the cost. Let's buy another clerk, pay another $100 grand to have the actual Oprah request met appropriately. But the idea of losing the public information accountability with the excuse of we're spending more money as taxpayer dollars is not a worthwhile trade-off, I don't believe. Okay, we're losing a lot more versus what we're gaining. And the excuse is, well, we have to use a lot of time, we have to use a lot of effort of people and effort and all that. Let's just pay for it. And frankly, a lot of that information, as I said before, if it was put on the website in the first place, we wouldn't have to have the Oprah requests, because this stuff is public information. Okay, so let's just please keep that in mind. And again, probably too late for that, but what can we do? It's just, again, please have the attorney or somebody to explain this stuff in a little bit more clarity in terms of what the trade-offs are. We're a little bit better tonight, thank you for that. But again, the taint has to be toward you being fiduciaries and representing the people, as opposed to administrators and clerks and county government and whomever else who does have, unfortunately, a selfish interest in just marginally less transparency and accountability. You as local elected officials who are not career politicians have to be our fiduciaries and really be vigilant about opposing this unless you're completely comfortable. I'm still not there yet, but at least we had a little bit of progress tonight, so I appreciate your time. Listen to my belly aching over the last few weeks. Hopefully Thursday and Monday will come out somewhat favorably, but again, I would encourage you to please tell your legislators, both on Democrat and Republican side, that you really want to make sure we continue transparency, and by doing the fee shifting item is really going in the wrong direction. Hopefully I'm inside 3 minutes, Mr. LeConte. So again, thank you, and thank you for your patience, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there, too. Okay, anything else? Any other?
No, that was the only hand raise.
Okay, then I will close the hearing of citizens, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?